Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm a pseudo-killer nigga, and I'm coming for your head. So scammers accountable for the pseudo shit that they spread. Ain't no more running, nigga, I'm pseudos to bed. I'm the boogeyman for these prayers, leaving these streets red. I'm a pseudo-killer. No frauds, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo-killers. No flim, slammer, hustlers, and scammers. We pseudo-killers. I'm tired of the stalking niggas, steady running their mouth. Beating just on platforms, always loud and wildin' out. They ain't saying nothing, only begging for some clout. When I step in the rain, nigga, mama say knock you out. I'm a pseudo-killer. No fraud, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo-killers. No flim, flammer, hustlers, and scammers. We pseudo-killers. If think you won't smoke, nigga, come and take your shot. It been a long time coming, nigga, now show us what you got. I ain't tryna be friendly, nigga, wipe ass off your face. This is war, nigga, only one way to see it, say goodbye to net. I'm a pseudo-killer. No cross, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo-killer. No flip, flammer, hustlers, and scammers. We pseudo-killer. Science is undefeated, nigga, so we never lose. We always well equipped, nigga, armed with all the tools. Always ready for a pseudo, they always tryna pin the rules. BK stumping, go these clowns, got them looking like some fools. Fuck around and find out, nigga, you should've stayed in school. I'm a pseudo-killer. No frauds, no fake, no fillers. Be straight pseudo-killers. No flim, flammer, hustlers, and scammers. Be pseudo-killer. Pseudo-killer.
Good afternoon, family, and welcome to another Pseudo-Killers production, another set talk. Yes, I've stepped away from the pedagogy just for a second because, we pseudo-killers, we got to do what we got to do. And pseudoisms stick their ugly head up. It's our obligation to knock it off immediately. So we'll be back with the regular scheduled philosophy of mind on Monday. But today, we take some special time out to say, to take a spin around the block and address some of the pseudoisms that we've been hearing. Let's be honest. You saw it in the thumbnail. It's a bomb squad and their Blackology. Now, first of all, for me, again, content, right? Produce content, so it's an opportunity class. But fundamentally, they're engaging in this from a philosophically wrong position. If you're flawed in your reasoning, everything that you do sequentially is going to be wrong. They admit in their opening that they are using a particular lens. They have a predefined conclusion, and now they are going to substantiate their conclusion by means of the exercise they're engaging in, right? Which is Blackology, which means it's confirmation bias, historical revisionism, misuse of information, outdated sources, right? I share that, admitted as much, and then double down and using outdated terminologies like Negroid. And I am going to just focus on the Grimaldi Man today. Just take us through the Grimaldi Man, the history, the misappropriation of race science and typological identification, all the outdated race science that these individuals are bringing back. They do not recognize the danger in that exercise in bringing faulty information to the platform. Race-based information was never appropriate. None of it. It led to the greatest kidnapping in the history of mankind by these racialized terms. You cannot get away from black being a racialized term. No human being is physically black. Let's begin there. Any association with the color has to do with reality. Yes, so all through time, people identified black. It is the night. It is the darkness. It is something that is there. We acknowledge that. There's no culture that is not going to acknowledge the darkness of the night, the darkness of the ocean, blackness of the sea, of the river, decay. They understand these things. So there's no culture that doesn't identify the color or the concept. But same way, so never speak in absolutes, but you would be hard pressed to find a culture that identifies themselves by means of skin. And then to use the term black. Right? Makes no sense. Just irrational. Right? The Egyptians, their skin tone was more desheret than it was kemet. So why would they identify their skin as kemet? They used the kemet, the black, because it had significance for their culture. And that's how they identified. It was the first empire consisting of different groups of people. That's why they refer to themselves as the Ramesh, the people, because of their understanding of their formation of these 42 nomes under one empire. But they acknowledge the differences between themselves as well. We keep forgetting that Egypt is an empire consisting of 42 independent nomes working under one regime. This is what made that civilization great. But that's a segue. We are here to talk about the Grimaldi Man. Let me see who's in the chat today. Let me say hello to anyone who's there. Ghost is in the building. Now, man, get those people out of the back chat. Tell them get in the building. Let's see what's going on. Ramon Bales, my brother's in the building. We got my brother from Denver, saying Colorado. What's his name? Lion K51. Peace. Black Sun. My brother's always in the building. Sir Goose, always riding shotgun, any sources, any links. So always going to put them in the chat. You can always just hit on those links because they are always supportive of the information that I'm presenting up here. Sabuz is one of those pseudo-killer arms that keeps the machine. I appreciate the work you do, brother. I appreciate it. All right, don't forget, thumb up the show. I'm gonna see if the God Killer anybody else gets in here. Before I go in, I'm gonna play a little bit of music again. Just get me in the mood to get this off. And I'm gonna play the PK anthem because it's appropriate. It's a
I'm a pseudo killer nigga, and I'm coming for your head. So scammers accountable for the pseudo shit that they spread. Ain't no more running, nigga. I'm pseudos to bed. I'm the boogeyman for these prayers, leaving these streets red. I'm a pseudo killer. No frauds, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killers. Don't flim slammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers. I'm tired of the stalking niggas, steady running their mouth. Beating just on platforms, always loud and wildin' out. They ain't saying nothing, only begging for some clout. When I step in the rain, nigga, mama say knock you out. I'm a pseudo killer. No fraud, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killers. No flip flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers. If think you won't smoke, nigga, come and take your shot. It been a long time coming, nigga. Now show us what you got. I ain't trying to be friendly, nigga. Wipe ass off your face. This is war, nigga. Only one way to sin. Say goodbye to net. I'm a pseudo killer. No cross, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killers. No flip flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers. Science is undefeated, nigga, so we never lose. We always well equipped, nigga, armed with all the tools. Always ready for pseudo, they always tryna pin the rules. BK stumping, go these clowns, got them looking like some fools. Fuck around and find out, nigga, you should've killers, no flame flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers, pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. Pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. Pseudo killer, pseudo killer.
All right, let's get right into the presentation. The Grimaldi Man myth. Debunking this everybody is black nonsense by the bomb squad. Shout out to Ashe and the rest of the bomb squad. He's a queen, pseudo. God energy, pseudo. Episode premise. The so-called Grimaldi Man has been repeatedly weaponized in racial narrative. There we go. By older European race theorists, by Afrocentric Black European mythology, Black Europe mythology, shout out to God energy and the nonsense, by internet racial enthusiasts. Yes, that's what you are. You guys are racist, whether you are conscious of it or not. You are racist. And by pseudo-historians claiming prehistoric Europe was originally Negroid. Again, God energy's whole entire premise. Let's continue. But the actual anthropology tells a very different story, right? We don't just walk through this, take our time, have some fun with it, because it's too easy. This presentation dismantles the origins of the Grimaldi Man claim, the misuse of outdated racial terminology, the falsification of cranial facial interpretations, and the ideological agendas behind both Eurocentric and Afrocentric distortion. What is a Grimaldi Man? The Grimaldi Man refers to human skeletal remains discovered near the French-Italian border. Take a good look at what you are seeing on the screen this moment. This is what they found. A man and a woman, seemingly, and this is uh, the actual, bones in the museum. Take a good look. This is what they found. Let's go. Found in the Balzi Rossi caves near Grimaldi, Italy. It was named the Grimaldi Man after the monarch of Monaco who financed the whole endeavor. The remains date to Upper Paleolithic period, estimated age approximately 25,000 years old, associated with Gravitinian culture. Grimaldi Man is not a species. It is not a tribe, nor a civilization, or a racial population. That's what it's not. It's not there. It is simply a label attached to specific skeletal remains. The two skeletal remains that we found, that's the totality of what is considered the Grimaldi Man. Just two individual skeletons from 25,000 years ago found in a specific location. Excavated in the late 19th century, key excavator René Verneuil. This is Mr. Verneuil. The excavation occurred during the height of scientific racism. Now, those who have been through the history of science with me remembers the fact that I keep mentioning that we had a whole history of pseudoscience. Before Karl Popper came in with falsification and the likes, we have a history of pseudoscience, which includes scientific racism. Excavation occurred during the height of scientific racism. Let's continue. Typological anthropology, outdated, pseudo, and racial classification obsession. Remember, this was the time where they were trying to classify people into Negroid, Mongoloid, this, and the five groups, and then six, there were nine at a certain point. They were all over the place trying to put humans in racial classification. Historical problem. Anthropologists at the time believed humanity could be divided into rigid biological races. All the work we've been doing on the community of skeptics and the pseudo killers, we know that this is not a possibility. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. So you got Caucasoid. And we use some of these terms still today, right? Colloquially. And we say a Caucasian, we're referring to a European, white person, although this is this is in fact very incorrect. Caucasoids, people from the Caucasus Mountains, don't actually carry this phenotype. Let's continue though. These are misclassification. Mongoloid. This is a derogatory term. It's uphill, but it's outdated and it's also derogatory. Negroid. I'm gonna leave this right here for a minute. Let that drill into your mind. Because this is what we actually believe that an African represents. All African must look like this or you're not an African. And this is a standard Negroid phenotype. Y'all can see the problems already here. These categories are now scientifically obsolete. Scientifically obsolete. Nobody uses them. They can't be used. They're inappropriate. They have no actual grounding in reality. Why were the remains called Negro? So let's start to see why they were actually called Negro. Researchers claim the skull showed, now this is a skull, okay? Prognostication, forward projection of the face. Mind you, these are the humans 25,000 years ago, and they do not exactly resemble modern humans, right? Because, of course, we continue to change, evolve. Let's continue, though. Broader nasal openings. Just based on this, let's continue. Elongated cranial shape. From this, they concluded these individuals resembled Africans. Remember the previous slide I showed you where the the Negroid features? All right, here you can see some of these other depictions that these people had of Negroids at the time. So the European, you see the first skull is quite small and neat, and then you have another individual, an African, with a more elongated skull. Then you see how they're overlapping the skull with primates, right? To say that the African is more like a primate. So this is a thinking process. This is the science, quote unquote, that is happening at the time. This is their conclusion. So I'm letting you see the basis and the foundation for their reasoning. But this conclusion was based on outdated racial typology, subjective visual interpretation, and racial assumptions of the era. What you're seeing on the right, that picture on your screen, are racial assumptions. There's no science there. These are arbitrary assertions, racialized. This is what these terms Negroid, etc., are tied to. The fatal problem with racial typology. Just a second. Birds look to act up in the wrong moment. Modern anthropology rejects these categories. They simply reject them. Negroid is scientifically obsolete. So anybody attempting to use these terms is scientifically obsolete, number one. Number two, and when you ask me what do you replace it with, you do not replace racial categorizations with anything because racial categorizations is obsolete. So no, there is no replacement. Did not end the stream because we were refusing to answer this silly question. You really think so, Ashe? If a concept is obsolete, you don't find words to replace it. You simply stop using an obsolete and outdated definition. Conceptually, it is wrong. Human variation is clinal and overlapping. So the whole categorization of humans into racial boxes is pseudo. Plain, simple, definitive, no conversation about this. You watch populations, you watch groups of people, share genetic and genetic ancestry, environmental constraints of each particular group. Cranial traits do not map neatly onto race. This is how they used to do this thing in the day. Makes no sense. You cannot use these simplified systems. This was inductive. Let's take it into philosophical realm for a second. This type of thinking is inductive because of what you had in your proximity. You did this measurement, and it seemed to overlap. When you actually examine the data, it falls apart because not all swans are white. Let's continue. Why the old model failed? Trait overlap. Features like prognosticism, that elongated jaw, nasal birth, and skull shape appear across many populations. Why? Convergence evolution. Particular traits are necessary in particular ecological environments. So you're going to get similar physical features developing independently. So the slanted eyes that belong to the Khoisan people did not get up, go into China and become Asians. That's not how that worked and took the eyes with them. No, these are convergent evolution. These traits develop independently based on environmental pressures. So you're going to see similar traits coming back by populations that are independent. Going to bring us to some points in the close future. So there are no racial markers. That's a myth. That doesn't exist. That's a lie. No such thing as a racial marker. So to use haplogroups, which is a statistic modeling based on SMP changes, allele frequency changes, you map human migration onto that. So that haplogroup data that we use, it is to corroborate the out of Africa migration theory. What does out of Africa migration mean? It tells you we could see where particular haplogroup, particular changes develop outside of the continent. What are the two main haplogroups that are on the continent? EB1A and EB1B and their derivatives. You have small populations of haplogroup B that still exist deep in the Congo Basin. There's no more haplogroup A. So you see that The greatest genetic diversity in haplogroups is going to happen outside of the continent. Why? We went through this exercise before, bottlenecking groups of people, small groups of people, environmental changes, different niches, all produce different outcomes. There is no single skeletal feature that proves black, white, or African, or any other group of people. Again, these morphological features overlap and they develop independently based on your environmental pressures. The Adamese Islanders, they are Asian by genetics. Southern Asians by genetics. They're genetically closer to no East Indians than to anything else. Phenotypically, you would say they look quote unquote African, but that would be lookership. Their phenotype is based on the environmental pressures. They have tropical features. These are these predominant these features: skin tone, nasal birth, hair texture, etc. They are predominantly in tropical regions, and they develop by means of convergent evolution, not by means of direct ancestry. So, if all these features are based on the environment, what is the underlying connection? What is this black white thing? How do they all become black? What does black mean in that context? The skin tone? So East Indians are black as well? What does that mean? Because their skin tone isn't black. Black is a social construct. We can't get around that. There are no people that are black and white. White is an old European construct. Within the continent, white and black were not used as racial terms, they were used as status. If you were black, quote unquote, means you had a darker hue from being exposed to manual labor. The white people were the aristocrats who did not have to be exposed to the sun and were using lead based powders to whiten their skin. Coming over into the Americas, of course, the aristocracy assumed this title as well. You had the disparity where also other Europeans were not considered white because they were not of the aristocrat. This slowly changed over time. Black was a term given to West Central Africans by means of the Portuguese, negro, Spanish, negro, which equates to black. Negro is just an Anglification of the word, hence where we are today. But that's a term imposed. It has nothing to do with the physical features of a group of people. It has to do with identifying a group of people in terms of a classification. Let's continue. The Reconstruction problem. Early reconstructions were heavily biased. Many famous reconstructions exaggerated, again, lips. They did this from skeletal remains. Nose width from skeletal remains, mind you, jaw projection, and skin tone. These were all assumptions. This reflect racial expectations, colonial ideology, and artistic interpretations. Remember that picture I showed you in a couple slides back. I'm gonna take you back there real quick. Work with me for a second. No, no, no. This one. This one. This photo here. This is an artistic rendition. This is how they conceptualize. This is how they conceptualize. So now let's move forward. I had to do that. All right. So here. So they exaggerated these features. And it was all based on their racialized notion. This reflects racial expectations, colonial ideology, and artistic interpretation. So you starting to see the problem that I have when an African American is trying to get us to engage with these type of terms? Let's continue. Reconstructions are not photographs. They are coming out of the perception and the minds of a particular group of people that at this point in time in history have this superiority complex. Remember, we keep talking about Darwin going around, and once he's been around, he's starting to see, wait a minute, once we teach these people the same language that we have, then the relationship dramatically changes. They are just as cognitively equipped as the rest of us. They did not understand this or believe this or accept this before. People were savages. Right? Let's continue. They involve assumptions, artistic judgment, and tissue depth estimations, and cultural biases. Cultural biases. The same cultural bias that the bomb squad uses to engage with this type of information. Hence, I'm here having to bring out the ludicrousy of a group of black people using Negroid and Grimaldi Man to establish blackness in Europe. This is wild because they do not know the consequences or the history of the stuff they're using. They do not understand the consequences of this type of action. Afrocentric Blackology and the original Europeans were black claim. Let's go. Pseudo-historical narratives often argue Grimaldi proves Europe was originally black Africa. How? Don't you understand the out of Africa migration? If you're using haplogroup, then there's no way that you're going to tell me that you do not understand that there are mutation that happen outside of the continent, these new haplogroup form, and that these are the outside of Africa mutations. They becoming their distinct groups. Skin tone, skin tone is going to vary, and your environment is going to dictate what are viable offspring. So over time, you are going to get a lightening of skin tone in these areas. Does this make them black? Black's a social construct. No actual human is black. So from the time we use the word black, we are applying a social construct. There's no other way that you can interject the term black and not be racialized or using a social construct. What conversation are we trying to have here? Please, I'm confused. 25,000-year-old fossil find in Europe of the Gravatian culture, clearly distinct haplogroups out of Africa evolutionary track, non-African in terms of genetics, but black based on racialized categories which do not apply. How does this make sense? Are they black because of skin tone? But skin tone is only a product of your environment. Doesn't say anything about culture, does not say anything about geography, it does not say anything about your history. So how is this a thing in terms of the conversation we're having? You're looking at their skin and because some have a quote unquote darker hue, some even super dark. Okay. Were they able to have viable offspring in that environment? For how long? Gina Jablonski, the skin map. Doesn't mean people were quote unquote white or European, but there were degrees in terms of melanation, right? Because of exposure to UVB. So what are we actually saying? I'm still confused. That's why we're here. Europeans are late invaders. Invaders from where? From where? Paleolithic Europeans were Negroid. Again, what does this term employ, mean, or signify? It's outdated, it's race based, it has no grounding in anything anthropological or genetic. There's no anchoring for this term. You cannot use cranial morphology, cranial and facial morphology to determine what is Negroid. That's out. Traits overlap. Based on your environment, you are going to get particular features. Within the continent, we have every ecological zone possible. So you're going to get varying physical traits. Northeast Africans or North East Africans have varying physical traits to West Central Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans. That's just a matter of fact. The ecology is different, so the evolutionary pressures are going to be different. Let's continue. Problem with these claims: genetic evidence does not support this. Ancient DNA from Upper Paleolithic Europeans show complex ancestry, deep Eurasian lineages. This we know by haplogroup formation, not recent sub-Saharan African populations. There is no E haplogroups embedded into deep European history. We know the disbursement of the haplogroups. We went through that exercise. Go back into the shows here on Pseudokillas channel where we break this all down. We slow the whole conversation down. We went from what is an SMP to what is a single nucleotide mutation. We did it all. We went through all the European lineages. We understand that the Aboriginals have their own distinct genetic lineage. I think it's OK, and I'm not sure right now, but nothing within the lineage genetic no sense of the word. On the African continent, you have every genetic diversity that you can imagine. It's all there. It is the biggest genetic pool. What you're seeing in other populations is isolation of genetic material due to bottlenecking particular phenotype, particular traits become dominant in the population, not by means of haplogroup, but by means of autosomal DNA. Make sure you have these two things distinct in your head. Don't forget, hit the thumb up button, like the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. We out here debunking Afrocentric Blackology and the original Europeans were black claims, amongst other claims by these pseudo bomb squad and crew. Dark skin is not equal to Negroid. So even within the context of this nonsense, dark skin was never equal to Negroid. Negroid, they were looking at particular predominant features. And the dark skin was not the thing that made you Negroid. That's why you have the confusion, again, race science, that the Egyptians were considered dark Europeans because their skin tone was darker than the Europeans. Their morphology was similar to what they considered Southern Europeans. So that was the whole confusion. You get these racialized terms that don't make any sense. But dark skin was never equal to Negroid. No one is going to assume that an East Indian is Negroid because of their skin tone. But they are going to assume that the Andamanese Islands are Negroid based on a whole other set of metrics, which in it of itself is pseudo based on convergent evolution. Again, it's not that hard. A population can possess dark skin pigmentation without belonging to a fictional racial category called Negroid. You have Southern uh, in Thailand, in Vietnam, super dark, super dark, yet not Negroid by any sense of the imagination because of their darker skin pigmentation. They're not going to categorize them as Negroid. They won't categorize them as Negroid. So, black now is skin pigmentation? No. They're Negroid. Do they fit the Negroid category, these other particular groups? No. So, how does this whole rhetoric match up? We're talking about black, but not race. And it's Africans all over the world, but they're not Africans. What are you guys talking about? You're incoherent. This distinction is critically important. Remember that. It's like how do you get around this? Your arguments are incoherent. They're not grounded in reality. They're not making any sense. You are not going to go to Thailand, look at a Thai who's dark as or darker than myself, and say, hey, my African brother or my black brother. It doesn't make any sense, neither within social construct nor within this outdated Negroid concept. If you go to the Adam and Eve's island, hey, my brother, you look Negroid. His genetics is Asian. He's no connection to Africa. Never been, never will be. Completely genetically the same. Is that an African? Is he black? What is that black? Is it skin color? Is it hair texture? Is it genetic? What is it? Your arguments make no sense. Again, not grounded in anything factual. Emotion that makes no sense. Eurocentric misuse versus Afrocentric misuse. Now let's see. Are these blackologists any different than the racialized Europeans? Let's see. Eurocentric pseudoscience, Afrocentric pseudoscience. Let's match them up. Uses Grimaldi Man to create racial hierarchies. Uses Grimaldi Man to claim black Europeans. Treats race as biologically fixed. Treats race as timeless essence. Uses typology to classify inferiority. Uses typology to reclaim superiority. Relied on visual stereotypes. Relies on visual stereotypes. Ignored population complexity. Ignores population complexity. I've said this so many times, and again, it's seeming to prove itself true. You become the thing you hate the most. You're so focused on, on combating racism with racism, you do not realize that you are becoming what you hate most. How can racialization of history work for you when it didn't work for the Europeans? Yeah, think about it. What is the difference? What is the difference? How are you any different than the European you are claiming to be this race? Both sides depend on obsolete race science. Obsolete race science. Taking us back. Misuse of anthropology. Essentialized human populations. Like, why? Y'all keep both doing the same thing? Racist. What modern paleoanthropology actually says, the current scientific understanding. What is it? Grimaldi remains represent. What do they represent? Upper Paleolithic humans in Europe with anatomically variation typical of ancient human population. Yes, ancient human populations had those physical features that we do not actually see in most modern humans, right? Jawline, etc. 25,000 years ago. Modern scholars generally reject the Negroid classification. Generally reject the Negroid classification. Simplistic racial labels. These terms and these racialized labels are not used in modern science. Yes, Piku is going to bring it. And this black population, man, that's a social context looking at real time demographics, and these terms are used in that sense. Doesn't mean they're used within science. Come on, have the conversation with some level of sincerity and honesty. We are looking at populations. These populations identify themselves as black or white, etc. And we're doing statistical research. That's a whole different conversation. And when you do this equivocation fallacy to make an argument, that is the most irritating thing some people do. Why do y'all do this? And who do you think you're talking to? Maybe you're that ignorant that you don't actually know that you're doing an equivocation fallacy. But at the point that you're asked to slow down, recognize the fallacy that you're making. Why do you need to get it off? You don't have real time ability to process the information, to synthesize why you're engaging, or then you're not engaging. You're here to have a speech, a rehearsed speech that you did in the mirror, and you need to get it off. You're not equipped or ready to actually engage in dialogue where you synthesize the information that you're being handed to in real time and continue. That is actual thinking. That's a discourse. Wait a minute. What you just said? Wait. Oh, got this wrong. You take a step back. No. I need to get it off. I need to finish what I'm saying because I practiced this for 6 months and I think I got something and I just y'all are infantile in your ability to reason. Y'all are not having conversations. A conversation is you hit and you adjust accordingly. You synthesize that information. You slow down and you attempt to engage with that particular information and synthesize it. You might have to change your position in real time. You claim to be willing to do so, but demonstrating that you can't. My tangent for the day. I'm allowed one. And typological interpretations that are outdated, wrong, based on inductive reasoning and limited scope of information. You cannot apply these metrics on a global scale because you're going to have overlapping populations. This makes this typological thing redundant in these determinations. Ancient DNA changes everything. You have the Visigoths, 1550. You have the Aluminian, 500 AD. You see, every one of these dots and their color represents a population group, a migration tract, a particular group of people. Ancient DNA revolution. Modern genetics demonstrate prehistoric Europeans were genetically diverse. You see the genetic diversity in all these groups? Each one of those colors represent a particular genetic population, haplogroup population. Skin pigmentation evolved over time. We understand why lighter skin pigmentation would be necessary in areas with lower UVB, especially if you don't have the diet to support the necessary vitamin D you need to synthesize to produce the necessary folic acid for viable offspring. There are two systems, either via your diet, as you see the Inuits remain relatively dark because of their diet, and you see the Europeans becoming lighter and lighter. That is population genetics. viable offspring. The lighter your skin in that environment, the more vitamin D, the more vitamin D you're able to synthesize. Folic acid production is on point, and you have viable offspring. Ancient populations do not map onto racial categories. They simply do not. So that is the anachronism we're talking about. Ancient populations do not map onto modern racial categories. They simply don't. So calling any particular group of people black or white in history outside of the context being used and the particular time frame, it is anachronistic and you are going to get caught. Stop it. It's a waste of your time. Important distinction. Let's go. Skin color is controlled by adaptive genes. UV exposure, skin map. Evolutionary pressures, again, convergent evolution. You are going to see particular phenotypes emerge independently based on the environment that these people are in and exposed to. Race is a social construct historically imposed onto variations. That's all that is. The myth of a static human races. Human populations change, consistently change. Over a couple of generations, you can go from one phenotype to the next. We've talked about this over and over again. It's not new. Over tens of thousands of years, right? Your skin color can actually, due to migration, interbreeding, adaptation, and isolation, you are going to get changes. And again, we're talking about early human populations. These are small groups of people, 30 to 100. So you're getting these adaptations rather quickly. Continuously reshape populations. The idea of an internal race blocked is scientifically indefensible. So to think of things as a homogeneous group of Africans on the Nile, and all of this is scientifically indefensible. That means you're not grounded in human evolution. You do not understand the population genetic mean. Even early humans, based on the environment that they were in, were going to develop distinct, even on the continent. The fact that these groups continue to come back together, move apart, come back together, they remain some genetic similarity, but within your population, within your particular group, you are going to see the traits that develop based on the environment that particular groups are in. This is not it's not hard. These racialized mindset is crazy. Why these pseudoisms persist? Identity politics. Now we know. Look, black African power. Black and I'm proud. I'm a black man. Yes. That's politics. That's not genetics. That is not biology. Y'all searching for ancestral prestige. Shout out to my boy Grant. He hits this on the head often so well when we have conversations about why. Why? Instead of producing, instead of getting out there, getting the education in the academias and being productive member of your society, you tend to want to look back at what they did. The Egyptians built pyramids and they were a great civilization. We were great. Okay. We, who's the we? Number one. Number two, how does their greatness help you today? How does their greatness help your lack of education? How does their greatness help your lack of scientific literacy? How does their greatness help you move forward and help your own family your community today, their prestige, the great civilization of the Egyptian. A dead civilization, mind you, even language is dead. Had its time, did its thing. But how does their accomplishment mirror reflect anything that you have produced in your lifetime? Ownership of civilizations. We Egyptians, you heard Sekou a while ago from God Killer. Our ancestor, man, listen, you're genetically distinct. They're much as your ancestors the Chinese. Because you were on the same continent doesn't make you genetically connected or related. That's some nonsense. You would not look at the Asian continent, the Eurasian continent, and say that the Mongolians are the brothers and sisters of the Europeans. You're not going to do it. You're not going to say that the East Indians, oh, the East Indians and the Chinese, they won. They all share a continent, right? But doesn't make them genetically the same. We respect and honor their genetic uniqueness. Yet we want to claim all of Africa when at this point in 2026, you know you're part of the Bantu expansion. You're part of the E1B1A group and not part of the E1B1B group. You're simply not. Genetically distinct. They have their own genetic evolutionary path based on their environment, based on their position geographically versus West Central Africans. We understand that whole Bantu expansion and the intermixing with other indigenous groups of people that share other genetic haplogroups and the absorption thereof. We went through all of this. So y'all cannot do the nonsense. Trying to own Egyptian civilization again for the same reason, ancestral prestige. Racial validation. That goes without saying. Both sides. Egyptians weren't black because black people couldn't accomplish something like that, or Africans couldn't accomplish something like that. And we did all that. Who's the we? Simplify the reasoning. And honestly, the only reason black people are into Egypt is because of Europeans and their Egyptomania. Europeans started Egyptomania. All these all these groups, all these Blavatskys and Rosicrucians, they didn't understand nothing about the glyphs. They did some lookership and made up these things. See, y'all following made up nonsense by Europeans who did not have a clue what was going on in the glyphs. Let's get real. The only reason that African Americans and anybody else is up into Egypt is because of early European Egyptomania. Internet echo chambers, YouTube pseudo historians recycle outdated anthropology. Reggie, they came from the South, and the invaders and lies. The Egyptians that are there today, they are invaded, they're lies. You know they're lies. Cherry picking images. Oh boy. We, we know how that one goes. The cherry picking of images. And obsolete terminology. Negroid, Caucasoid, craniometral facial measurements, and all the rest of the pseudoisms that you keep pushing. Let's go. Emotional appeal. This is the one they hit you with the most, and y'all fall for it. This is the number one reason why these myths survive. Racial narratives are emotionally powerful. You heard the vigor that a Jose Francis talks, and he gets upset when he hears the Egyptians can't call it, nobody called black, and he's offended to his bones. He wants to tear King Jay's head off. Cause how dare you not consider them black? You're becoming like a white man in all these narratives. Not because the evidence is wrong. There's no evidence to support the claim. You're just making it up. All right, the bigger lesson here. The Grimaldi case, what does it teach us? It teaches us science evolved because that race science is dead. Negroid, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and all those outdated terminologies are no longer used in science. Science proves that it's a self correcting mechanism. Old anthropology made serious mistakes. It was just mistakes. These dudes were racial. This was intent. Turned out to be complete nonsense. But their intent, their baggage. Race typology was deeply flawed. Inductive reasoning, based on your limited amount of data, you concluded that this was an actual thing. Get out of here. Modern genetics overturned simplistic racial thinking. Modern genetics has ended this discussion. We cannot be using terms like Negroid or any such term in modern understanding. We understand genetic overlap. We understand genetic continuity. We can see distinct distinction in groups based on their genetic makeup. Come on, can't do this stuff no more. The real danger: pseudoscience often works by taking outdated scholarship. We got the bomb squad bringing back race science. Y'all have no clue how dangerous this is, especially in the world we live in today, where racialized concepts are on the forefront and nobody is shy about it. And you're bringing outdated racialized concepts back into the lexicon. Negroid? Are you serious? Removing historical context. This whole Black Egypt thing is at this point why y'all are refusing to allow the Egyptians and that particular time in history to be what it is. Again, no human being is black. What would be the incentive to identify yourself as black when your skin tone is more akin to the Deseret? Makes no sense. From a modern perspective, these racialized terms are second nature. We actually think that brown people are black because of the indoctrination. But there would be no reason for me to look at myself and call myself black when I identify the darkness of night as black. There would be no correlation there. When I can identify the pupils of my eye as black and look at my skin and see that there's a big distinction there, and presenting it as suppressed truth. Yeah, boy, we got the hidden secret knowledge that it didn't want you to know. Like Ang said, it's hidden in the thing called the secret vault called the library. That's why you guys got all the secret hidden knowledge. All right, final takeaway. The Grimaldi Man remains do not prove Europeans were Negroid. They prove something far more important. Human variation is complex, fluid, and resistant to racial mythology. You can't do it. What we actually know: The remains are upper Paleolithic humans. Early racial interpretations were shaped by scientific racism. Modern anthropology rejects typological race categories. Ancient DNA does not support simplistic Black Europe narrative. If you understand the out of Africa migration and you understand what is a non-African versus an African, you cannot use the term Black Europeans. This again makes no sense. From the moment you say Black, you are not talking about skin tone, you are talking about a racial designation. No human being is Black. So when you say Black, what are you saying? You're making a racial classification. You cannot get away from it. You simply cannot. Both Eurocentric and Afrocentric pseudoisms misuse outdated science. We side, right? Side by side comparison. They're using it for the exact same purpose. Bomb squad, y'all need to quit. Get out of here. What we reject? Original Europeans were Negroid. Hard rejection. Get out of here. Pseudo. Pseudo alert. Cap. Nonsense. Biological racial essentialism. There is no Black race. There's no Black thing. So how do you classify an Adamese Islander as Black? Based on his phenotype? His phenotype is a product of environment. He's a non-African. So what is this Black thing? Black is not his physical features. Black is again racialized term imposed on people of a particular with particular phenotypical features. These phenotypical features are produced by your environment. None of them are Black. So the moment you interject that term, what are you doing other than being racist? Cranial race mythology. You reject that nonsense. Y'all know I'm taking the morphological overlap from the cranial and facial distinctions made in the early 1800s. I know in today's modern context it is pseudo, but if you add that up and you look and you paste the haplogroups next to this, you can see that there's an overlap, which I'm presenting here. This is God energy, right? Pure nonsense. Everything he's uttering is nonsense, and I'm gonna do it again. Well, I'm taking the cranial facial morphology. Yes, in some instances, I know the God killers, pseudo killers would say that's outdated, but when you take that and you overlap it with a haplogroup disbursement, you can see that there's a correlation between what we are calling morphologically Black with the phenotypical characteristics identified by these haplogroups. BS, utter bullshit. The dumbest nonsense coming out of this dude's mouth. Y'all getting pseudoized, flim flam left and right, and y'all believe this nonsense. It's the most ridiculous it ever. Now, since I'm hitting them today, I'm allowed two rants. Y'all know how stupid and infantile that nonsense is. First of all, the out of Africa migration theory is supported by haplogroups. Haplogroups clearly give you African and non-African. If you follow the haplogroup sequential, you will see that Adamese Islanders and Aboriginals all have distinct haplogroups that have no connection to the African continent. If you see where they develop and how they disperse, you could see that they came out of European lineages, evolved, and that the environment produced the phenotypes you see today. You see that they took 16,000 years to get to where they were going. How are you connecting them to Africans and the term Black? What makes them Black? I don't know. Pure and utter nonsense. White supremacist race science. This is the most dangerous thing. Y'all are injecting white supremacist race science into the conversation and not aware of it and the dangers thereof. You're opening a door that was closed a long time ago with your nonsense. and masking it up as if we're black and proud, and so we're gonna show you and make the whole world black. That's ridiculous. Get out of here. Pseudo. Suggested sources and scholars: Paleoanthropology, Eric Flintoff, Chris Stingers, Ian Tattlesall. Genetics, David Wright. Shout out to David. Savant Pablo, Race Theory Critique, Stephen Jay Gould, and the Misuse of Man. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, quick little drive by on those pseudo guys today, because I ain't letting that go down without a fight. Right? We are here to combat the nonsense, and that is pure and utter nonsense. Right? This is pseudo killers. You jumping up on the platform making pseudo games?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ah, yeah. Ah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm a pseudo killer nigga, and I'm coming for your head. So scammers accountable for the pseudo shit that they spread. Ain't no more running, nigga. I'm pseudos to bed. I'm the boogeyman for these prayers, leaving these streets red. I'm a pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. No frauds, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killers. No flim flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers, pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. I'm tired of this talking, niggas steady running their mouth. Beating just on platforms, always loud and wild and out. They ain't saying nothing, only begging for some clout. When I step in the rain, nigga, mama say knock you out. I'm a pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. No fraud, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killers, no flim flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killers, pseudo killers, pseudo killers, pseudo killers. If think you won't smoke, nigga, come and take your shot. It been a long time coming, nigga. Now show us what you got. I ain't trying to be friendly, nigga. Wipe ass off your face. This is war, nigga. Only one way to sin. Say goodbye to net. I'm a pseudo killer, pseudo killer. No cross, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo killer. No flip flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. Science is undefeated, nigga, so we never lose. We always well equipped, nigga, armed with all the tools. Always ready for a pseudo, they always tryna pin the rules. BK stumping, go these clowns, got them looking like some fools. Fuck around and find out, nigga, you should've stayed in school. I'm a pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer. No fraud, no fake, no sellers. Be straight pseudo killers, no flim flammer, hustlers and scammers. Be pseudo killers.
Killers, no fake, no fusslers. We straight pseudo killers. What it do? What it do, God killer? Good here. You're on mute. Okay, okay. See what it do?
Pseudo killer, pseudo killer, pseudo killer.
You.
Yo, yo, yo. Grimaldi Man. Race science. Yeah, bro.
Man, this take me back, man. I ain't even gonna lie. I remember I remember when I first got knowledge of self, right? And I was a wild boy. I had my book of life in one hand and crack in the other hand. So we we used to go we used to go to the bookstore, the black bookstores. You know, it was in every major city got them. We had about three of them. Man, me and my partner, man, we used to go and literally clean up and just go in there. And you know what I mean? Spend $100, hundreds of dollars on books. All right, long story short, first time I came across Grimaldi, man, was this book called What They Never Taught You in History Class.
Oh,
But-
look at that.
and it was produced by Indus Kamek Kush, right? And you know they went through the whole thing, the same thing that the young boys is quoting and all of that stuff. They had all of that stuff in there, but what the book was in general was it was a whole lot of quotes from books, and it had it had every continent, Europe, Asia, the New World, everything, and they had different quotes out of context saying how everybody, black people was the native people on every continent all around the world. So, and that just this whole topic just take me back to that. But it's like a deeper it's like a deeper thing, man. It's deeper than this is just the surface. This is a symptom of a lot of people are drawn to the conscious community because you know what I mean. We've been always been told, we've been lied to, we've been lied to, we've been lied to. So a lot of people, you know what I mean, in earnest, they go out on these on the missions to learn what the lies was, and it's always an ideology waiting to collect all these people. You know what I mean? Whether for me it was the
Yeah.
5%, for other people it might be the Nation of Islam, for other people it might be Sunni Islam. Like it's a group, it's the commissions, the whoever. Like it's a group for everybody. So
Mhm.
in this type of stuff, it feeds that initial thought process of damn, they hiding stuff, and this is the hidden knowledge. So they people be really thinking they be unearthing secrets when in
Yeah.
reality you are unearthing debunked history, debunked science. That's why it's not widespread, because years ago, decades ago, sometimes centuries ago, that stuff was proven to be fugazi. So that it's not hidden, it's just wrong. And
Yep.
now here we come all these decades later, and then we come unearthing and taking all of this stuff and taking it out of context. And we think we doing something, and really we doing more harm than good. And honestly, we doing harm to ourselves because we whole time we stunting our own growth.
That's a fact. And to your point, secret hidden knowledge. Listen to that statement, folks. Secret hidden
Yep.
knowledge. Knowledge is by definition things we know. It cannot be secret and hidden and at the same time knowledge. So what you're actually doing is what Preem just said. You're digging up outdated misinformation that the community has left behind. There is no need to engage with outdated data. And this is the problem that we're encountering. Y'all are bringing up stuff because you're not academically trained, you refuse academia, and you're going in with, like you said, lenses. You're engaging in this whole endeavor with a presupposition, confirmation bias. Like that book you read was a classic example. I'm going to pull the quotes or find pieces of literature that fit within the narrative that I want to create, and I'm going to put them all in a book. And now you're actually creating the perception in your head that you're reading some concise information because it lines up so neatly. But that's because you're engaging from a wrong premise, right? And that's why I kept illustrating. Nobody is physically black. So what would be the incentive to use that particular term to identify myself when I can look at the night sky and identify that as pitch blackness, as darkness, and we see these references made. One of the false claims being made is that the ancients had no concept of black. Yes, they did. Come on. People are unique because we see in tricolor spectrum. That is what we always have. So there was no point in time that we were devoid of the ability to identify color. However, when you're identifying, you're connecting yourself, you connect yourself to the ancient big tree, to the foot of that great mountain, or to that river, or to a particular land. Who identifies themselves with these superficial terms like black? And you can see that even when it was imposed on a group of people, it was not done to identify them phenotypically. It was to identify a group of people that we deem chattel slave as product. Los negros. You are not busy trying to know who's a dinka from a man. That's not your premise at that moment. You simply are trying to identify your product. God killer. All right, Praxis, you got the floor, my brother. What's good?
You, man, everything. I got distracted a little bit. I had to deal with some business, but I heard most of it. Most of the beginning. It was great, man. I love your presentation. I love all your presentations. And hello to you in the chat, the panel in chat. It was a question I had. Are you aware of J.A. Rogers?
Yes,
What is your thoughts on
I
his
I
work?
I I have no specific comment on his work overall. Maybe Preem have some more information because I come from the scientific route, so I'm never engaged in reading a lot of these particular books like um, um, the destruction of black man and these stuff. So I do not come from that wheelhouse of information. So I know of these individuals, but I know I've not read that type of work.
Oh, okay. I haven't read it fully anyway because I started reading it and it kind of bored me. Because I
Reem,
wanted to find
you have some background
information
info on
like
that book.
Yeah, I read a couple again. I read a couple of his books back in the day. I'm familiar with it. He has stuff like 500 facts about the Negro, and he had a pamphlet the five Negro presidents, and where he supposedly went back and showed how five presidents had black blood. So he dealt with a lot of the stuff that I was talking about. He pretty much was dealing with the history of the time and what was available. And you know what I mean? He was in the same vein. He was a little bit ahead of Dr. Clark and them, I believe.
yeah.
He may have been a little bit older than them. He may have been a contemporary. Oh, what's the guy? Man, God, Civilization. What was his name? George Jackson.
George.
He was back in their day. So they are kind of in the same vein where they meant well and they were dealing with the documentation and what was available. They
Yeah,
weren't people who were doing field work. They weren't people who were, doing archaeological digs or things of that nature. They were
Right.
generally historians. So they were going through the documentation that was available, whatever primaries was available, and they came to we all know all of their work. It's in the same vein as Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark. It's all in that same vein. Some things are good, but some things is a stretch. He goes too far, and you got to read it, but you got to take it in that context that it was older. Um, we've got a lot more information. We've got almost 100 years, almost we almost like 80 years, because he was writing books in like the 20s and 30s, I believe. So
yeah,
we got, you know what I mean? We almost got 100 years on his scholarship. So just if you're going to read it, just take it for what it is and recognize that it's from a certain time and a certain period. And he was in a certain environment. It was it was literally, he was at the dawn. He's literally a pioneer in black history. He's one of the first people that really took black history seriously and one of the first black people that was instrumental in documenting, documenting our past. So
yeah.
he's a great, I would never disrespect him, but you gotta look at his work in the context of what it was and the time and the purpose of why he published what he published.
I would put him in the category of the revolution or the evolution of black existentialism, where blacks were us in the West were putting history together, putting our stamp on reality, right? Because we were written out of history, or misappropriated, and in those racial times, that was the information that they had, and they were working with what they had. So what Preem is saying is the role in making us realize that we have a history, that we are significant, and that we did play a role is important. However, in our modern times, you need to put it in its context, right? That once the information becomes outdated, you have to leave it where it is, and deal with more accurate, up to date information, especially if you're promoting scientific literacy.
So
Mhm.
you
And
saying that it was
and
more
you know
like,
what?
so you saying it was more like surface work?
Let me jump. Let me jump. Let me jump. Let me get
Go
my
ahead.
turn. My turn. Let me jump. Let me jump. I got his book. I thought it was a great book. From Superman to Man by Joel A. Rogers, right here. It's a good
Mm-hmm.
read right here. Yeah, produced in 1968. It's outdated. The book is about close to 6 years old. All his work is outdated, which is cool and proper. Remember, he self-taught himself. He ain't get no training in anthropology, something like that. So that's why he makes those mistakes, which is okay. Wasn't nobody doing it though. We needed somebody to go do it, and he did that. But he wasn't trained. Well, hell, the anthropologists prior to that, they was making a whole lot of mistakes, and they supposed to be the professionals. Now the field ain't that no more. Now the field is serious. You know what I'm saying? So early on, I mean, hell, him shooting in the dark and them shooting in the dark, they might have had some advantages. They had the money, they had some advantages, right? And what they was talking about, maybe. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? We just gotta tell people it's out of date. Now, as for the Grimaldi thing, I would say he was right. Because right now you can just pull a Wikipedia article up on Grimaldi Man, right? It's different from European skeletons, so they say. Read the whole Wikipedia article, right? It's right there for everybody to see. Pull it up for y'all, right? And let's just see what the encyclopedia has to say about Grimaldi Man. All right. So I'm not saying he wrong for saying the things about Grimaldi, right? Because shit, Diops and them,
That was the original. That was the original. That was the original.
mhm.
Um, that was the original word on it because it was originally
Let's look
reported
at it now.
as,
Let's look at it now.
yeah. And but they just can't. They just went back and changed the
Let's see.
classification.
Oh, here you go right here. Let's see.
Yeah,
They're going on
yeah.
pure observation.
Fine. Yeah. Let's see what they're doing right here. All right. So, physical characteristics. Grimaldi skeletons were very different from the finds that they had on Earth in Europe until then. Okay. They talk about Neanderthal. Grimaldi skeletons are slender and docile, even more so than Cro-Magnon man finds, right? All right. Boom. They give you the height. Here's where a lot of Afrocentric thinkers, make them the Koi stand and all that, right? 5'3", 5'1", where the Cro-Magnon was taller, maybe 6'3" and 5'7". Y'all can see this, right? All right, so let's move on. All right, we're just going with it. They got the reconstruction. All right, y'all can read all that. Reconstruction of the face, read all that. Let's come to the Eurocent. Okay, the history of classification. Let's deal with the history of classification for a minute, right? All right. And the history of classification, the finding of the first Cro-Magnon, right? They tell you 1868, that's old. Ideas, humans, French, archaeologists, cradle, okay. Move ahead, cranometric characteristics, Grimaldi remain shared certain similarities, all right, to tropical African, all right. I think we kind of talked about it in the server, but also European features. Okay, we can kind of understand that. The Keith pointed out that the Grimaldi man may be an intermediate race, right, between Africans and Europeans. We can see how they're trying to make these inferences, right? It also talks about he suggested Grimaldi man might have found his way to Europe over the land bridge from North Africa. They say both the Strait of Gibraltar and the route of Algeria via Sicily was thought to have been fordable, right, in the late Paleolithic. All right. Others have suggested that Grimaldi people may have been related to Bushmen, Khoisan. There's a source for it, Smithsonian Institute. All right. Original text. That's 1930. That's very, very old. All right. Let's keep moving. Classification. All right. By 1970s, new finds. This is what the brothers are talking about now. From Jabal Kasu. Am I saying it right? How you say that? How that Jebel
What's the
You
how you say
saying it
that?
right, You saying it right. We know what you're talking about, man.
Coach D, I want to say it right. Come on, y'all can get that right, yo. We don't got to play with it.
We gonna
I
be
would
here
say
all
that.
day. You trying to pronounce
No,
the
not
2 syllable
what's
words, man.
what
Come
the
on,
bad
get your
word is. Leave me
dang,
alone.
time restraints.
Jabal Prophet.
Yeah, Jabal Prophet. Yeah, all right, okay. Yeah, we can get it right. We're gonna be in no damn all day. We don't be here all day. We got it wrong. Shit, see how quick you cleaned that up?
Hey, they
All
say
right,
me and
hold
you they say me and you the worst 2 readers in the community. I want to have a read off.
on.
See who the worst.
Nigga, I can read, nigga. I just ain't had that word, which ain't a normal regular word. All right, boom. I definitely read. I don't know about
I'm just telling you what they're saying about
you.
it.
Keep
Go
going.
ahead,
You
man.
keep going. You keep
Yeah,
going.
that's the thing. That word ain't even English. It's like a Semitic word or something.
Right. I ain't never seen the word for a day in my life. I ain't worried about y'all Negroes. Y'all Negroes. Anyway, so on the top, let's see Japan. Let's see let's see Paleoanthropology Indians. Okay, had considered broader knowledge of early human populations. The old term Cro-Magnon. So they switched the old term Cro-Magnon, right? And they replaced it with anatomically modern humans. All right, so they find anatomically modern humans in Cro-Magnon Europe, right? It's they to encompass the expanding population of outer Africa, including Grimaldi remains. All right, so they saying it's coming out now. Afrocentrism, we talking about Diabs, it's 1981. And since the Grimaldi Man, right, present a distinct black race, different from Cro-Magnon found in other parts of Europe, and previously argued the classification in 1974 work. We all got the book, The African Origin of Civilization, 1974. Diop had defended his use of the terminology as set criteria established by anthropologists to characteristics of Negro, black skin. So he didn't make it up. That's why I want to read this. He did not make that up. So for all the young scholars moving forward, right, he used available data of his time. All right. For all the people that's playing with Diop's name, right? You need to play with the anthropologists that came up with it and found the shit because that's exactly what they said. That's why it was important for me to read the Eurocentrism. Even the Eurocentrism said it was a tropical African, but could be like an in between. Okay, that's why the conversation in Egypt was so hard. Okay, we keep going. Ratios, they say traditional racial categories have now been abandoned by scholars with the advent of modern genetics. See, here we go. All right. So that's why this conversation with Say Cool was interesting. We gotta abandon it, right? Because it's not there, and it ends right there. All right. So it's not giving you a clear, let me see, age findings.
Actually, if you go to the DNA,
I'm moving up.
they give a little. They give a little. That's where the evidence of the Eurasian migration,
It's an early human population.
Eurasian migration of farmers come.
Yeah. They say it's early European modern human population.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mm,
Hey,
mm.
was these your Asians melanated or
No,
can
no,
I
no,
ask
no,
you a
no, no.
question?
Let me just don't ask the question the minute we doing this.
Yeah. You
Okay,
mean
go ahead.
I wanna end it where actually Cedric picked up at. You get it? All right. So we end the encyclopedic entry here. All right. And that's basically all they got. Now, what was you saying, Preem? You were saying the what? The
Yeah,
genetic.
no, it's
All right, let's
all
get
right.
there. Hold on.
The Grimaldis was back. They dated what they call Cro-Magnon man, and to incorporate my man the answer to my man question. At that time, lighter skin was beginning to mutate. So around the 20s and 20,000, 30,000 years ago.
Mhm, mhm.
That's when the white skin that we know was
Yeah.
beginning to mutate. But that
Whoa.
said,
What
that
about Esau though?
hold
Esau
on.
supposed to be the
That
first.
said,
Well, what are you
it
doing,
still
man?
wasn't widespread. It didn't get to be widespread until the advent of farming around 8,000. And a little bit, maybe a little bit before that, it
Yeah,
was
you
an
right.
invasion. It was an invasion of farmers from Eurasia taking over the land from the hunter gatherers, and that's where, and they were the ones that introduced the other white skin mutation because there's two different genes. It's mutation in a couple of different genes, but it's
SLR
two main ones.
1400, something
Yeah,
like that.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's one that's native to Europe and it's one that's from Eurasian, from East Asia. I mean, I'm sorry, from West Asia. And so, and
Yeah.
that's where And around 8,000 years ago, that's when white skin that we know, blonde hair, blue eyes, the white people that we would know, if we was to go back in time before 8,000, we probably wouldn't recognize what we saw as Europeans. They wouldn't be Europeans to us.
Well,
You know
how,
what I mean?
so
But around
how did Esau?
8,000, they would be the
Can I ask a
ones,
question, brother?
you know.
This
No,
this will help you beat the Israelites. So how did Esau become the progenitor of the light skin? If the light skin mutation was already out there,
This environment, JJ.
you know, I had to throw my shot. They
Yeah,
don't want to.
yeah, you talking about them? I can't even help you with that, though.
Bella, you got
Some of your friends, huh?
I was trying to say something, bro. Hey, I would
Wait,
say,
Bella.
I went back up praying. I would say actually was it wasn't indigenous to Europe. It would have been indigenous to the Middle Eastern area, like the Trans-Caucasus area before it went into Europe. The SLC range first. It would have lingered around that first before they, transitioned into Europe. From indigenous to Mesolithic Europeans, or whatever. But if you go back to that, I'm trying to get you to go back to that article. If you go back to the physical characteristics, you're trying to read, so that they kind of can come with a actual conclusion. You kind of you read the beginning of it, you go to the bottom of the physical characteristics.
They said they felt like in between, right? What part? Where?
No, not the history of the classification.
I know what part. What part?
The part where it say physical characteristics. We'll talk about the Negroid, and then they changed it and said it might have been just different variations of what
European trait?
what they call Cro-Magnon man.
These traits combined with that of D. Villeneuve interpret as with prognatism led, the discoverers to the conclusion that the Grimaldi man had been of Negroid type. Some traits did not fit the picture, though. The nasal bone had a high nasal bridge, like the Cro-Magnon and modern Europeans, and was very unlike those of modern tropical groups. It say the two rises of the frontal bone in the forehead were separate rather than forming a single medium rise. Another European trait. The cranial capacity was also quite large for their size. Yeah, they still ain't reached no daggone conclusion.
Hey, that description, it kind of sound like you a little bit. You sure you ain't on your age?
Yeah, all right. Might just be.
Come on, man, laugh it off. Man.
I can't laugh because I'm focused right now.
All right, go ahead, focus on. Go ahead.
No, they did. I'm saying it. Yeah, they pretty much put them in the category of Homo sapien.
Yeah,
Of the early European modern humans
I can
that they used to call Cro-Magnon.
Yeah, and
That's really what it is. They just made them Homo sapiens. Before they was it says early anthropologists noted specific limb proportions, such as long forearms and legs, that led early debates about potential similarities to modern Negroid or Sand populations. But they, after time, it was originally a debate, but then they came to the conclusion, after time and more scholarship, that they are just Homo sapiens. They're just regular, what they used to call Cro-Magnons, but they got rid of Cro-Magnon because that's from an archaic time. They was trying to, that's when they was trying to say Europe was the cradle of civilization.
Yep.
So they had to get rid of that Cro-Magnon when they, when they, discovered everything in Africa and all of that.
No, they're just anatomically modern humans of that era, and genetics indicate that they come from a European population in terms of haplogroups.
All right, so I'm saying I think I can safely settle on them being European files. I can settle on that.
Yeah, that's
I just want to make that point that the option when they had reliable data, right?
Yeah,
that was limited.
Yeah.
So he wanted pseudo. But if y'all keep using that shit, you pseudo. That's my whole point.
Exactly. That's the point. That's the real point.
Great show, Cedric. I just wanted to just throw that in. The whole thing to show you that they wasn't just making that shit up like everybody the opposite. No, stop it. They had what they had. Now we got what we got. We stand on the shoulders about correcting the shit he got wrong. That's the difference between what we do and what they do. There you have it.
That was important, and it lines up with everything just was demonstrated in his last show, right? So this is just an add-on to that, and that point is necessary when we in our modern times harken back and we go past Sheikh Anta Diop and we dig into the race science itself and bring it forward, we are committing a grave injustice not only to our modern times but to the work that those people did, because we need to continue to build and grow and develop off of the work that they did, right? And that's a great point that Ang just made.
Yeah,
Preview, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say because the realest part, and it need to be emphasized and stated as much as possible. It's always a old, outdated source to feed the pseudo mind.
Yep.
And it's
A
out
fact.
there, and it's and if you not disciplined enough, because I think I said it yesterday that this research requires on an individual level, when you're the individual doing the actual research, it requires a little bit of personal honesty and integrity, because if
Yep.
you don't have that within you, you will be led by your bias, and your
That
bias will take you, and it's always somebody that's going to feed your bias, so you will always be led astray. So you got to be real with yourself to do this for real.
for
Either that
sure.
or you just going to be easily led astray.
All right, Vino, the most. Thank you for joining the panel, my brother. Since you're here for the first time, you got the honors, you got the floor. Go ahead, you can speak
Oh,
your speak.
okay. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody doing good. Okay, so with that being said, our so so we can only prove through science that black people, like where black people was at on Earth. Is that what I'm getting from y'all? As far as like what was said in history, as far as everything in history being debunked, and it all being debunked through science.
Um,
And when it comes to black people and different parts of
yeah,
the world and stuff like that.
I would need you to be a little bit more specific. Uh, um, I'm trying to get your question. So can you ask your question again? Slow it down a bit. Maybe I get a little
Okay, so when we talk about black people being in America and stuff, right before white people and stuff, right? Uh,
pre-Columbian
yeah,
pre-Columbian Africans in America.
right.
No,
Nah,
that is just a no, hard no.
Now, are we saying this just from um, bones that was found, or just from what scientists are saying, or are we going off the historical?
So when you look at history today, it is a process of accumulating data from several different disciplines, right? And we know simply for a fact that there's no pre-Columbian contact with the Americas by Africans. Um, there is the earliest records that this discussion starts is with the Columbian contact, right? And there is no evidence, no archaeology, no history, no accurate data. There is old, outdated misinformation coming from a time where science and these processes weren't applied properly. So that's why you get the work from Ivan van Sertima. He was not making stuff up. He was drawing data from other so-called historians and scientists who were actually making it up and had it fundamentally wrong. So so in that sense, it is simply outdated and debunked information that is not applicable in
Damn,
the.
now I can't hear.
So, so it's Christopher Columbus even real?
So is Christopher Columbus real?
Yes, as far as like as far as if we said
Yes.
that a lot of stuff in history was debunked uh, as far as
No,
all the
no,
people back then that was the experts
we
that
have
they was doing it
evidence.
wrong.
Yeah, so we have actual evidence. We have his writing. We know his father, mother, his brother, his offspring. So yeah, there's multiple sources and evidence to corroborate the existence of Christopher Columbus. The letters between him and the state, the financing of his voyages. I mean, there is documentation upon documentation to support that actuality.
So
So
Okay, so what about the documentation when they said that they was finding black people within the Americas when they was exploring?
Can you provide a source that says that? Because none of the documentation that we actually have attests to that fact. Not Columbus's documents, not those who were with him. So that is a claim being made, but there's never evidence to support that particular claim. There is no description of black people in Columbus's documents or in any of the people from around that time. Not Vasco da Gama, not in the description of the Southern Americas, none of it. So again, this claim is often made, but it's not supported by evidence.
So, but the evidence would be the historical
The
history.
who? The who?
But then, what would be the
The
evidence
who? The
that you
what?
would need if you have the
Wait a minute. Back
if
up.
you
Back
got
up.
people
Back up.
saying it?
Back. Slow down. The what? Begin
The
again. Start
evidence
with
is the evidence is the history of the people of
which
the
evidence?
explorers. They're
Which evidence
saying,
are you talking about?
well, okay, so we go with Balboa in the discovery of the Pacific Ocean.
Pacific
And
Pacific Ocean.
yeah, the first white man to discover the Pacific Ocean. So
The first
when
white man to discover the Pacific Ocean,
yeah,
there was always people on the Pacific Ocean, like
well, as far as seeing it from coming from we're going west as far as
no,
like to the Americas.
if you go west from Europe, you put into the Americas. If you go west from the Americas, you're in the Pacific already.
Yeah, so I'm saying that he was the first one to discover the Pacific Ocean crossing through the American land in Panama.
Okay, okay.
So when he was over there, it was two different black black tribes that was over there that he ran into.
No, there's no evidence to support that. He's describing the people, indigenous people, and they might have had a darker hue. Does that make them black? Oh,
I mean, when they describing them as Africans and that they
no,
could be,
no. There's no description of these people as Africans. Again, these claims are made. Show me a source. Like, show me an up to date source that describes these people as African. Even if they're describing a darker hue, I'm a European, and I see someone in a darker hue, and I identify them as such. Does that mean I'm identifying an African?
I mean, I'm
Can
saying
I
the people
can I
is
chime in?
calling. I mean, the people is from Spain. They know what an African look like, and they saying that they seen some
Exactly.
people that
That's
look
why
like.
you cannot find a source that says these resemble the Africans that we have over 100 plus year relationship with. The Portuguese knew what Africans looked like. They had intimate relations with the Africans. I speak an African Portuguese dialect based on that relationship. So they were completely aware of what Africans were, and they did not describe these indigenous Americans as African nor black.
So, in a few sources, you do see them describing some early Native Americans as black, and like the brother said, in very rare
So
instances, they did compare them to Africans. But Cedric, I do agree with
where's
you
the
that
source?
just
Where's the source?
because
If
well,
you make a claim like that on this panel, you're gonna have to source up. You don't just make claims. We ain't Sonetas here.
no
Everything
problem.
you say, you're gonna have to support. Because no, you're absolutely wrong.
E- even though the brother didn't have to do that, I will give you one source, being Christopher Columbus himself in his personal journal. But there were up to 11 others that said the same thing. But I was just about to say, I agree with you that even though they used the descriptive black or African, does not mean they were literally looking at people that were exactly synonymous
with Africans. But I think they were using that as a description to just show that these dark-skinned peoples shared more robust features as opposed to say like maybe a dark-skinned Pakistani person. Because I get your point that just because they were calling them dark, those Indians could have looked like a dark-skinned Pakistani person or a dark-skinned person from Mongolia. But I think to the brother's credit, when they use the term dark or black like an African or looking like Africans, I think they're speaking of just more robust features that even me and you still might not say is completely Bantu or Nilotic, but was more in line with that than a dark-skinned Pakistani or Mongolian because of the gradient,
So,
because of the climate gradient.
where's the source? I don't
Christopher
have,
Columbus.
I do not, I absolutely do not operate on assumption. And
Yes.
even if that description was made, I
Uh,
understand the ignorance in which that description was made. So what we'll use today is we'll use the actual evidence. We'll use the evidence, we'll use sources, we'll use genetics to understand who these populations are. Once you understand the out of Africa migration, that conversation is null and void. You understand the phenotypes in the Americas. So now to go and do all the speculation doesn't produce anything or provide us with any accurate information. See, now I put up here
I
what.
wasn't speculating.
So look at the source sometime, and it's called Rutgers African Studies, right? This isn't a source. I put it up there. Suggest black people may have reached it. Now, where does this suggestion come from? This is a suggestion made not in the source. This is a suggestion made by the people engaging with this evidence. And of course, this is outdated evidence as usual, right? Because genetics, genetics answers these questions. We understand two migratory paths. We understand the Pacific route and we understand the Bering Strait routes. We understand this. We have the genetic mapping of these people. So at this point in time, when we understand the isolation, the development of these specific groups within their specific geographic environments. We understand this. Why are we insisting on using anachronistic terms, social constructs which apply to a specific group of people in point in time, label the rest of the world with this particular thing that has no bearing, no reality, no significance in terms of understanding history, human migration, or anything?
Can I answer?
You can answer that in it.
Thank you, my brother. The point is because the primary text that we are referring to, being the eyewitness accounts of the conquistadors and Spaniards themselves, use these terms. And then with those terms, we know what the modern proxy would be that would represent phenotypically these individuals. And that it does apply to the population groups we're talking about, specifically those who took the Pacific route, being associated with Melanesians and Austronesian type peoples, right? And the term black or
Let's
black
slow the
people
conversation down. Let's slow the conversation down.
applies
But
to those. My bad.
Let's
I
back
was trying
back.
to answer. I was trying to answer all three or four
Now,
of your
but
questions in one.
so that throw a lot of difficult words, complicated words to come on the wall. Let's slow down.
No
Okay,
problem.
what these individuals were saying at that particular point in time in history. First of all, you have a contact with the new world, right?
Yes.
You are going to take their accounts into consideration. Boom.
Mhm.
Now, at the same time that you do that, you step back and you have a modern understanding of genetics, human migration, and
Mhm.
how these similarities can be made. And we know that these similarities are going to be made very, very superficially based on skin tone. Conversation.
And some facial
So
and
now,
morphology.
right there, we need to pick a
that's it.
hard stop in our analysis of the information. And when you're doing a historical analysis, are you taking one for one what they say, or are you putting it into relevant context, understanding the ignorance of these individuals, the limitation of their
Mhm.
understanding of human population, and now when you take that into account with the accurate data that we have today, you can never make the cross reference saying that these could have possibly been, because anthropology, history, genetics
Could
point
have.
otherwise, point to
Isn't
that
it
simply
too
not
far
being.
removed?
When you say could have possibly been, who is the specific could have possibly been that you are talking about? And then may I clarify my statement, because I was a little vague with my statement.
So again, you understand the limitations of the information that these people are
I
moving
got
with.
that part.
Number two, so when they describe these people, however they describe them, do we
Mhm.
take that as a one-for-one account, or do we apply our modern understanding of genetics, anthropology, and actual history,
Yes,
and then make an actual determination that no, whatever he saw had no resemblance, no
I wouldn't
connection
say
to,
no
or
resemblance.
no overlap. However, you can understand that with his limited information, he would make
Mhm.
certain analogous, certain conclusions. Right? Oh, these are dark like the Africans. Does that
Yes,
mean that he's
That doesn't
referring
make them
to them
Africans,
being an
though.
African? No, not by
exactly.
any stretch of the imagination.
Exactly. And I wanted to clarify that just because I brought up the primary text mentioning the word African, I in no way say that the foundating population of the Native Americans was African. So me bringing that up was not to support any type of statement that these dark-skinned peoples were African. I just want to clear that up. And when I say that they used African as an analogy, like you said, it was merely to point to a morphological type, even though in their ignorance, they could not accurately identify the morphological type, like you're suggesting. So he
No, I wouldn't
used,
use morphology. I would use pretty much
I
skin
just
tone.
mean whatever their,
Morphologically, there
hold
is
on,
very little
hold on,
overlap.
hold on. This was the point that I'm getting to, because and like you know, in the Americas, there would have been a gradient of phenotypes of facial features from those that took the Bering Strait route and those that took the Pacific route. What I am putting forth is that when these conquistadors ignorantly said the word African, they were trying to identify individuals that looked like those who took the Pacific route. That's what I wanted to get to, is that they
Uh,
were
uh, uh,
ignorantly describing the Pacific route people.
and again, that assumption is completely flawed. The people that took the
Okay.
Pacific route, the Adam and Eve Islands, are a specific group of people in the South that did not take that route, right? These
Yeah,
people remained in their particular environment.
of course.
We know the groups of people that moved across, because that's still within their culture. These are more of the Hawaiian looking type of people that crossed over to the Americas. We understand
Also,
this.
also
That is why.
Aboriginal,
That is
according
why.
to the genetic evidence, the Aboriginal Australians and Melanesians took that route as well. That's the
Oh, stop
significance
that.
of the findings in South
Now
America.
you're attempting to use haplogroups. You cannot use that. This haplogroup dispersal is over a larger group of people, and within that haplogroup dispersal, you have autosomal differences because of their specific isolation. So
That's fine.
you cannot take the overall haplogroup K and say that that's an aboriginal crossover because they share this haplogroup population. Within those haplogroups, you
Right.
got sub-haplogroups. And when you look at the sub-haplogroups that came over, these are more akin to the people of the Hawaiian Islands, etc., that particular era. Not
And so
necessarily
that's why I mentioned
or
Austronesians.
Australia.
That's why I
So
mentioned
again,
Austronesians earlier, because you have to take into account the introgression that happened between Melanesians and
what you
Polynesians,
have to look
largely due
at
to the
within
mtDNA.
those
So wait,
haplogroups, you
just
have
hold on.
subgroups.
Just hold on real quick, because the introgression between Melanesians and Polynesians would have created a mixing, a clinal gradient. So all I'm trying to say is that these peoples were describing the clinal gradient between Polynesians, like you're
Now you're
saying,
moving the
and
goalposts. Don't do
Melanesians.
We
that.
started off in Europe. How
Stop
we
right
end
here.
up in the Pacific Island?
Stop again. So you're taking a major haplogroup, which
No,
identifies. D- so
I
now
didn't. I
this
mentioned the introgression. I
now
mentioned the
now
population.
I'm gonna talk about sub
But
haplogroups within the population.
but
You
that's
have
not what I'm
you
saying.
have you have distinct subhaplogroups which make them distinct from the greater haplogroup. So within that great haplogroup, you have these subcategories, and the groups that came over here are distinct, and we know them too. So throw them back into the overall haplogroup is not the game we play there. I studied this stuff to the point. I ain't doing that. All right, all in an attempt to make the Aboriginal Australians part of the phenotypes that cross over here. Now we ain't doing that. Not,
Melanesians. No,
not doing that.
I'm
We're
just
not
saying the
doing
overall
that. So
Melanesians.
we're
And
not
when
doing
you
that. It is specifically the Polynesian branches
Mhm.
of that greater Melanesian group that came over here. And those
Mhm.
Polynesian branches
Polynesian,
have their specific haplogroup, right? It's haplogroup. And within the population, we can understand the phenotypes that occurred
so
throughout
that
the population.
that final
So we're
form
not
of your
going back.
statement.
We're not going back to the Australians or the Aboriginal Australians, as these are
No,
people.
that's why I've been saying Melanesians, and you yourself in your final statement said the Polynesian branch of the larger Melanesian group,
Good.
and that statement
So
is
we're
what
not
I've
going to
been getting at.
create any illusion. When we talk about
Good.
Polynesian, we have a clear distinction of the population group that migrated to the Americas via
Hmm.
the South Group and the Pacific Group. So we exclude the Australians and the Aboriginals from that because they are part of a larger group, and we know the specific subhaplogroups that made this cross. Similar to that of
Yeah,
the Americas.
like C
Understanding
two,
this,
like C
understanding
two.
this, understanding this and the complete genetic distinction that exists within and what stayed on the continent, the two
Yeah,
major haplogroup split and a small archaic haplogroup that still exists, there is no genetic overlap, no continuity. So any morphological overlap is understood as part of environmental pressures. As we can see specifically in the Adam and Eve Island, these people are genetically distinct.
we're not talking about the
Genetically distinct.
Adamese though.
Genetically distinct, the Adam and Eve Island. They're
They're
genetically distinct.
isolated. They're
They're
specifically
genetically
isolated from
they
this.
are genetically distinct from anything that is African. Their haplogroups develop outside of the continent. Yet we
We're
can
not
see
talking about Africa.
based on convergent evolution, they share phenotypes that match those of continental Africans in some geographic zones that have the same environmental pressures.
Well, to
This
correct you,
makes
they
them
carry those
non-African.
phenotypes with them from their split from the
No, they
DE
don't carry
haplogroup.
phenotype with them. Stop. They are
They
not.
they did.
They do not descend from the E haplogroup by any metric.
No,
They
the
come out
D.
of the
I
C
said
and
the
D haplogroup.
DE.
They come out of the
The
C
Adamites are
and D
largely of the
haplogroup.
D haplogroup. They're largely of the D
Yes,
haplogroup,
and
which
this
split from
comes
the
out of the
DE.
C haplogroup, which was an out of Africa mutation.
But you
Doesn't
do
come
know,
straight from the Stop,
but you
stop,
do know
stop.
that the D
Stop,
and the
stop,
E
stop, stop,
haplogroup formed a
stop, stop,
macro
stop,
group called
stop,
DE. That's
stop,
all I said.
stop, stop. That D haplogroup is a
Mhm.
European out of Africa mutation. And that
Yes,
went
it
further
is. It's
down.
Eurasian. It's
Good.
Eurasian, not
So
European. It's Eurasian.
it is distinct from what remained on the continent. It's an out of
Yes,
Africa mutation.
yes,
So
I
now
agree.
that
I never
mutation
said that.
continued, and that 16,000-year track to get to that particular geography, you have
Hmm.
mutations based on the environment and environmental pressures. They did not maintain any particular phenotype. That was a phenotype that exists because of their particular geography. Your geography is going to put environmental pressures on you, which is going to determine
It's called
phenotype. You understand?
environmental determinism. I know it's
Convergent
environmental
evolution.
determinism, but
Convergent evolution.
they are isolated from the conversation of Polynesians and Melanesians coming to the Americas that we were talking about. So we kind of shifted the
Yes,
conversation a
the
little bit.
conversation indeed did
But
shift because I'm
no
looking
problem.
now
I
at
wanted to
these.
ask you about Grimaldi Man when you get a chance. That's why I came up here.
As soon as I finish this point. So now we
Yes,
have
sir.
a group of people that are non-African by any metric. None of their genetics tie them back to the continent. There's an out of Africa population. They share phenotypical traits with continental Africans, and we understand that as environmental pressures. Now, when you start to use terms like black, to identify these people? How do you do that grouping? Based on skin tone, based on physical traits that are environmentally produced and have nothing to do with ancestry, genetics, or continuity?
Through the cladistics, which is
There's no
the
statistics.
environmental pressures, the feet. Did you want me?
So
Was
if
that a
you're
rhetorical
using
question?
cladistics,
Was
if you're
that a
using
rhetorical?
This is
if you're using
pseudoscience.
cladistics, you would have to
Cladistics
have
is
an
not
overlap.
pseudoscience. Listen
You
to
have
Cedric.
No, I said you're
cladistics. If you're
using it
using,
as and
go ahead,
making
please.
it
No,
pseudoscience.
I didn't even get to explain how I'm using it. Like,
You're
go
trying
ahead.
to use it racially. That's so that you're trying to take legitimate science and then you're trying to apply apply it to a faulty premise, which is race, which is a social construction that has no
Well,
biological
I didn't use the
reality.
term race. I don't
But
think I
that's
used
where
the term
you
race,
don't have to use
but
the term, but that's where you're headed.
The moment you say
no,
black,
it's not
it
because I
equates.
That's where
didn't
you're
I didn't
headed.
The
go
moment
there.
you say black,
Yeah,
it
I
equates.
landed where I went. If I
You
never
that's
would.
what
got
we're
there,
talking
but I
about.
landed where
But
I
that's the
went,
but that's
then
the
that's
whole
not what I'm
context of
talking
this.
about.
But that's the whole context of this conversation.
The moment you say black and refer to human beings, that's a racialized term. There's no other way to use it.
I thought he was finna say phenotype. He didn't
I'm
get it out.
talking about phenotypes and morphological types, but we're not letting
Of
us get
what?
there, and
Of
then
what?
I'm not allowed to use
Of
that.
what?
But
Of what?
I do want to get to Grimaldi, man.
Go ahead.
No, I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to ask you what your breakdown on Grimaldi Man was, because we might be in agreement. Because I don't agree with the Khoisan theory of Grimaldi Man, so I wanted to hear what you said about it because I missed it.
Yeah, he's a 25,000-year-old
Or the
European.
Grimaldi woman and boy.
Yeah,
Pardon me.
they're 25,000-year-old European fossils. They fit firmly within the genetic grouping of early Europeans, and we see that 25,000 years ago, right? These people moving back and forth based on environmental pressures. At this point in time, you are seeing changes in their morphology, right, based on the environment that they're in. So, in terms of skin tone, at this point in time, you don't have that European pale skin, although it's starting to interject. So, what you see is people that we will quote unquote melanated, but there are varying degrees in that skin tone, right? So, you look at the skin map, Gina Zabaski, based on UVV exposure, you are going to have varying degrees of skin tone. That's
Plus
always
diet.
the case. Yeah,
So
environmental pressures, etc., produce that pale European eventually, but that is based on a population genetic.
So we are definitely in agreement then that the Grimaldi people would represent that Paleolithic hunter-gatherer European lineage.
Yeah,
And just so it's based off of the craniofacial analysis and their morphological and
Damn, I
phenotypes,
just lost my
because they
man.
haven't had any significant DNA to come from them yet to test their haplogroups, right? But because of their morphological type and everything about them, they fit well within the Paleolithic European populations like
yeah.
Gravetti and others. So
And they have significant genetic material of that particular time and of
yep.
other specimens. And now the advent of being able to map these people genetically is what is rendering them an out of Africa population, right? Uh,
Yes.
and uh,
Yes.
and you see, even this is prior to the inward migration from the Anatolic farmers into early Europe, right? So these
Mhm.
are these are
And this was before that.
early
Yep.
early Homo sapiens sapiens, right? Anatomically modern humans.
Hmm.
In previous classifications, Cro-Magnon man, and all of these type of
Yeah.
outdated classifications, right? So that's why these classifications do not longer apply. That's why morphology, as we now understand, right, is overlapping. You are going to find morphological traits in every population that overlaps with the other. So spare
Now,
start
how do they measure those morphological traits? What do they analyze to create those?
skull morphology and limb proportions, etc. So, and that is the outdated typology
Mm-hmm.
a typological morphology that is absolutely not applicable
Exactly.
when you understand anatomically modern humans. That was a deductive reasoning based on limited information, limited data, and a wrong process. Why? Because we see that these traits overlap
Mm-hmm.
in
That's what
population.
a Klein and a
And
Clade
that
are.
and it was the analysis of that data, because that's what the European scientists, they were setting out to do. They were trying to set out to prove that there was actual biological differences, and they
In
used
sense of superiority and
craniology
inferiority.
and studying the length of
Right.
limbs and things of that nature, and that's the tools that they were using to prove that there were distinct biological races. But when they analyzed the data, they could not find a pattern. They had to consistently move goalposts and change criteria. And no matter how much they changed the criteria, they could not make it fit. So it was
That's why
all
they
of that
landed.
data collections from the
That's why
Absolutely.
they
anthropologists
had they
that
started
that
with
shut
9
that
races.
whole thing
They
down,
landed
the
on
whole concept
Kleins
of
and
biological race
gradients.
down.
Hey, Cedric,
Now,
I got a
that
question
didn't
for you.
mean anything. That didn't mean anything socially, but scientifically and biologically,
Didn't
when
mean
you
anything
start talking
socially.
about that, it's the conversation is null and void, because there is no scientific or biological foundation for the race discussion.
Yeah, none.
Right. They
So
only use that to determine Kleins and gradients of population
no,
morphology.
they don't use that. They don't use that anymore. That's why they use genetics. Because
You just said
that
that
is
the
outdated
Grimaldi was classified
typology.
using that.
Outdated typology. That is the word you must remember. That is not used in science anymore. It's not applicable.
It's
They're not.
Doesn't
exactly
work.
how Grimaldi
It
was
simply
used to,
doesn't
it's what
work.
they used to
Let's slow it down.
classify Grimaldi as
Let's slow it down.
epigravettian.
Let's slow it down. In 1901, it was done. Where in 2026, for over 100 years, that type of science, quote unquote,
Mhm.
is no longer applied. Why? Because all human traits overlap. There is no way to use this type of metrics to determine who or what population an individual came from.
It only identifies the clinal gradient within a specific
It doesn't.
population.
It
And
doesn't. It
hold on,
is not
can I,
used.
I've been listening to you guys. Can I just make this one point?
All right, make
And
it.
it was the craniofacial metrics that they exactly examined
Mm.
and used in the paper about the Jebel Erud findings. And Cedric, you know that when you read these phylogenetic papers, right, it always includes the craniofacial analysis, because once you use the genetics to define the population group, you use the craniofacial analysis to plot that individual on the gradient amongst that population group. Every phylogenetic paper that you will read today used by modern scientists is accompanied with the craniofacial analysis. There's a reason for that. It's not outdated. It's being used to this very day, and it was used in the Jebel Erud findings. I don't know why you guys are trying
So,
to
so
make it
this
the
is where
phrenology.
this is
We're not
where
talking
this
about
is where.
phrenology.
Okay. Now you're done.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
Cedric, I got a
I'm gonna
question
slow
for
it
you,
down.
brother
No,
Cedric.
I'm gonna let you go after I finish sometime.
All right, go ahead.
When you boom bam bam use an outdated metric as if it is used in the same context today to justify an outdated system, there is where you're not gonna catch me, right? You're collapsing two systems that use things that seem the same, completely different end purposes. When we are looking at these morphological traits today, you are looking at a Kleiner gradient within the population, facial reconstruction, etc.
I
There
said
is
that.
there is no use of these instruments to determine race.
I never said that. So
Grimaldi
we are
man
in agreement.
Grimaldi man was classified within a racial context using these clinometrics completely wrong. The
Agreed.
metrics your analytical points, everything about that system not done, not used. It is
Yep.
not used. When we look at the word applied today, it is a completely different system within a different context and applied differently. This is a case again of the same word being used two completely different ways for two completely different objectives. You cannot collapse the two. What Grimaldi Man and his typological morphology was trying to do was race classification based on artistic rendition, not based on bodies and bodies of data with specific metric points, etc., right? Examining cranial development. They are not overlapping. They are not two and the same. They are not even related. One is an outdated race classification, and another is a metric being applied within cranial representations, right? So you're gonna for example, limb proportions now are going to be used, and you see in a particular geographical zone, we're seeing a particular limb proportions, etc. At no point is that being used to say, well, this is a particular race, because these morphological traits are within ecological zones. They are going to come back based on your ecological zone, has no lining, no similarity, no connection to anything racial. And that's where that collapse happens. When you
Agreed.
use that to say this person is now black, or this person is by definition now a black African. There is where the
No.
confusion comes in.
No, black doesn't mean African, and I just wanted to make sure we had that clear. And
Black
in the
doesn't mean
definition given, in the definition given, regardless of how you feel about our usage of the term black, one of the things that we did not use the term black was to automatically imply recent African ancestry, and we tried to make sure we made that clear in the intro.
so.
So just so
That
you know,
that added to the confusion because the word has a specific context.
syntax,
It's a
yes, a
social
social
context.
syntax.
When you use that to identify any particular group of people at any point in time, it is racialized. Physically, no human being is black. So identifying a human being as black is automatically in racialized terms. There is no other way to apply this term. It is not a quantitative analysis of melanin. It does not say anything about ethnicity, culture. It is a social, racialized term, and there's no other context in which it's applicable. I'm gonna let you come back to that, but I'm gonna give Santan the floor. Santan,
Oh, peace to the panel. And Cedric, I'm really here just for the teaching because I do give respect to your scientific knowledge. And I have been giving Anonymous a little credit too because you said things that I know. But here's my thing right here, and I don't have no problem with people. What do you say about the Aboriginal people with their little group and their little thing? I'm just getting a little off course, saying that they were already here. So how would you identify them and say, as far as phenotype and as far as, because I'm not going to even say Black Indian or wouldn't, I'm not going to say none of that. But how would you identify them as where did they come from? Because they did pop up out of nowhere, Cedric. How would you answer that?
Native Americans.
Well, they listen. We got people look like me and you saying that they Aboriginal and they was never from a certain place, a certain zone like Africa or wherever, right? So do you understand my question now? We got people like me saying they Aboriginal and they was always here, and they big mama said that they was always here, and things of that nature. So what would you say to that, and how could you identify where they really, come from, or what are they really talking about? Because I have noticed, Cedric, that it's dying off. I don't know how, I just know it died off in our community, right? As far as they run around talking about their Aboriginal. I didn't notice that then that following kind of died. But it's still alive and kicking. It's just not as explosive as it was. So what do you say to that? What I'm trying to get across to you?
Honestly, sometimes I know what you're talking about, but if you've noticed, I've stayed away from particular conversations that I feel and find completely pointless. Flat Earth conversation and the Abo conversation.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
is
Good. All right. I'll leave
so
it at that
no,
because
no. I'm gonna tell you why too. We have the scientific evidence to support the Earth being a globe. We simply understand that, so it's pointless to
absolutely.
argue that. And if we're talking about Ivan van Sertima's work, we can talk about that. We can put it in its proper category, understand what he was doing. But for anyone to be claiming native ancestry and do the grandmother, your grandmama stuff, man, take a DNA test. I can guarantee you, your haplogroup is going to be E1B1A, no, E1B1B, which is sub-Saharan African, and you're going to have autosomal admixtures, be it from Europeans up to 20%. Some of us might have a 0 to 2% Native American ancestry, and the rest is going to be 70 to 80% West Central African and the diasporic.
Hmm.
And
All
why
right.
Yeah.
you see that diversity is because
Yeah, I
of
do.
our
I
slave
do.
history.
Hey, what you got to say, Anonymous?
Pretty much. Like he said, we had the DNA evidence, we have the anthropological evidence. As far as cultural things, we know that that they crossed through the land bridge, multiple populations from all up and down the Pacific coast into the islands. They crossed the Bering Strait. They also came via water. They haven't figured out all the way how they did it or what type of structures, but they just go by the genetic evidence, and they know that the folks who were the native populations and who pioneered us being in North and South America and Central America, they came from Asia,
Hmm.
and and don't get it twisted. Those were Asian people. They weren't by the time they came over here, they had already went through their genetic mutations and became natively Asian. They were tens of thousands of years removed from Africa. There was nothing culturally African about them. They had their own customs, their own way of life, their own adaptations, both physically and culturally to their environment. So there was nothing African about the people that crossed into the Americas. And like I said, we have the genetic evidence. It's kind of conclusive, so it's really not a debate. As far as random folks saying they have my grandmom was Indian, that's possible, but as Cedric said, the numbers are what they are. It's about 75, like you said, 70, between 70 and 80% African, 25% European, maybe a little bit of Native Americans, and then whatever random admixture you got in your family, your little personal family situation that we all have, you know what I mean? Because there's always mixing going on one way or the other, and that's just what it is. And it's no, unless they willing to hit a lab, they really can't debunk that.
Well, I want to end it on saying this right here. I would say if I'll let you see me. I would say me, if I was saying, hey, my people, my big mama, we already been here. I'm Aboriginal. I'm an Aboriginal. And that's where I draw the line at when people do that. So I don't make no argument with them though, because that's why I really asked Cedric that too, Anonymous, because Cedric, I never, as far as intelligent as Cedric is on science, he never got into none of those back and forth with none of them guys. So that's why I asked you today, Cedric. And it's a kind of important, man, because you got a lot of, not only is they misrepresenting themselves, they got a lot of gullible people that's following behind them. So it's really a serious thing when you're dealing with science and people, and you're dealing with the reality of the way things are. So science, people in the reality. That's it's a
So
that's
so
a big three.
Miss Juju of the Pseudokillas, she handles the able department. She's versed in that, and also we all got our specialties. But it is a
Right.
subject that the Pseudokillas tackle, and of course, shout out to Sean from the Marcy Warrior Clan. He be tearing these abos up. So at the point that you have such great defense and great response. It is not, it is no subject that I necessarily think I'm gonna jump into, and
Yeah.
especially I'm not a continental American, so there are certain nuances and certain social issues that I'm outside of the preview, and I don't want to seem as one of those people who are trying to dictate to anyone
Yeah.
what it should be.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
conversations about scientific literacy, breakdown, like Preem just did. If you get that, you can understand that grandmama story isn't applicable, right? So that is a much better way to approach it from my perspective than to just start to attack these people. Like, and Juju, coming from Florida, knows the Seminole history and stuff like that. She's much better equipped and adapt at dealing
Right.
with those issues and the sensitivities around
Guess
that.
what, Cedric? I want to say this.
So
I just learned something. I'm sorry for cutting you off because I'm about to fall back. I just
go ahead.
learned something from Anonymous, though, that made sense because I'm wondering if they Aboriginal, and I showed you how I look. So he made me he put my thinking cap on about the phenotype of the Aboriginals and the Indians and things like that. It do more look Eurasian than anything else. And through the pressures and through the times of the, environment changing for them adapting, that's where they come from because they definitely don't come from African, phenotype. So I just learned a little something. This is something for me to think about because I was wondering, like, the Indians got the long nose, the straight hair, and then some of them got the eyes that's, Eurasian. So, you just, Anonymous, you just made me think a little bit more. And I thank both of y'all for that info.
Appreciate it.
Right.
Black
And you
Will,
know
you
what?
got the
Another
floor.
thing.
Oh,
Can I add one more thing?
Go
And
ahead.
the other thing, Suntan,
Cedric
look,
said I can speak
it's still
after Suntan.
untouched tribes in South America, right?
You say that again?
It's still untouched, uncontacted tribes in South America that people have, randomly had interaction with. They've got pictures of them, so you can see how they look. You know what I mean? They're melanated people, but they're not what we come from. So
Right.
it's,
At all.
so
Absolutely. That was my point of bringing it up. Because I told you, somebody look like me. I ain't see you, Prime, but somebody look like Cedric or me. How can we say we are Aboriginal or Indians or something like that? We could say that because of admixture, but we can't say it because of phenotype. So I leave it.
And they still on reservations. So like,
it is what it is.
Black Will, you got the floor, my brother. Thanks for being so patient. I appreciate you. You got the floor. Black Mill,
Said what I wanted to ask said, blessed to the panel, respect to everybody. I saw what you said in the presentation, like maybe in the beginning, you were speaking of the A haplogroup and you were saying it doesn't exist anymore. I swear I heard that. I was just double checking. And one last question. I wanted to know what you think about the Venus figurines and the phenotype.
So I did indicate that haplogroup A is archaic, very old, over 350,000 years ago. So that haplogroup is no longer predominant. We have traces of it. Remember, we found A00, but that is also a derivative of the major haplogroup. So predominantly, you still have B haplogroup, which is a very early haplogroup in the Congo Basin, and the rest of the African population is primarily E1B1A and E1B1B and its derivatives, right? So, yes, I did make that statement. Your other question
was about the Venus figurines, like how you see them.
Venus figurines. Can you elaborate? I don't think I have a clear understanding of what you mean.
Yes, a number of them. I mean, since you were on God energy and then presentation, I think they touched upon that, right? God energy, if I'm right. I don't know which one of you all did, but
About which thing, real quick?
The Venus figurines, the different Venus figurines, they
I
found
believe
in.
Ashe spoke on the Venus figurines.
Okay, yeah. Well, said you might not be familiar with it, so we shouldn't go there. But yeah, I was just saying, according to my research on the haplogroup A, like they were saying that some of these people from, they have some of the remnants of A's. Like I was asking God Energy that during the presentation too, which is the Nilo, I feel it's Saharan, if I'm right, which is in Sudan,
Dinka,
and
Dinka
the
Sudanese as well.
and the Beta Israel in Ethiopia.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And it's found amongst the Khoisan. It's largely associated with the Khoisan
Yeah,
as the
which is the first group of
basal
people.
African clade. Then you
Yes.
get the Dinka
So
Sudanese
so
clade
so
after that.
what is the proposition with the Venus statues?
They were found in Europe, and according to I mean, just the whole phenotype is, if you type them up, you could see the phenotype looks. I mean, doesn't look like
Yeah,
anything.
that's a common phenotype amongst women from all
Right.
cultures, all civilizations. They have that.
Okay.
That's a natural part of women. So we have, again, this is an assumption that we have, like um thick legs, big behind, big butt. That is not, that is a female attribute because this is the areas in which they naturally store fat. It is not a feature that is going to identify a particular race or group. This is within every culture. If you look at
Right.
early Greek statues, their women are voluptuous because throughout history, what people thought as the standard changed, right? It was big breasts, voluptuous hip. The amount of fat that you had on your body
Cedric, may
was
I
an indication of
chime in?
health. So, seeing a European statue depicting voluptuous women, because that is what their culture dictated, doesn't mean that they're referencing to any particular African group. Huh?
Black Mill, what they also suspect is that the reason why the Venus statues would have been also figures of worship, but also the ideal of how a woman would look is because during that ice age, a woman that was healthy, like Cedric said, that represented healthy, right? Because you would be able to survive times where there weren't food around so much, and also childbearing.
All right then. Yeah, great
Great
show.
point.
Yeah, man.
Great
Bless.
point. Yep. And to Sosa's point, at the end of the day, this is all archaeological speculations. Anything else, Blackmill? Praxis, you got something?
No, sir.
Cedric, you said I could respond to your
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
statement
Yeah,
about.
I was just going around there. I'll give you the
No
floor. Go
problem,
ahead.
brother. No problem. So yeah, I just wanted to get clear that in our intro, we did clarify that our use of the term black does not mean recent African ancestry. I believe Issa Queen said it more than once. I tried to repeat it in my intro just so there wouldn't be any confusion. Because, like you said, when people hear the term black, based on the syntax of how we use it in the Americas and the Western world, it usually means, African descended in some way. But that's why we tried to clear that up in the intro. And maybe my use of black, because when you were speaking, I made the comparison to myself that the term or the use of the term white in the socio-political realm includes people of European descent, people of Arab descent, and sometimes people of North Asian descent, right? So I was saying, well, my use of the term black is how they're using the term black, but that's in the socio-political realm, right? And largely that is how I'm using the term black, in a political way. And then I'm speaking about my political classification using science, where you guys are saying that doesn't apply. So I get your argument. And I also agree that that's what I'm doing, right? Because I know there is a political aspect to my lens. So that's where I'll say, like, I'm not arguing against certain things. I fully acknowledge the misuse of race in those types of classifications scientifically. That's why I kept mentioning declinal gradients. That's what those craniofacial analysis are for. I'm repeating for the fourth time, as you had just said it as well. So it's the political usage of that term black that I know I'm using that you know is not scientific, but it is political. And I will sit here and just plainly say, yes, that is what I'm doing. Just so you don't think that I don't think that I'm doing that and mixing the science with my political philosophy. So I do want to clear that up as well, because I think that was a point that y'all were trying to make. And I want to admit to that.
Like if we are having a political discussion, um, we are all going to agree to the socio-political structure, by which means we here, especially in the Western Hemisphere, are black, right? There is no denying that. However, when we are, that's why it becomes confusing when we're having a historical and a scientific conversation, and that term is put on the table. It creates a conundrum. And I'm going to give you a little bit of history how that conundrum created for myself. The Black Egypt conversation. I entered the Black Egypt conversation and said, well, yeah, they're black. Well, but why not? Nipsey also, I consider Nipsey also black. When you do that, now you create a confusion. Because if I use that term black just like that, so now when we look at an East Asian, because I'm using based on skin tone, right? Socio-economic, socio-political skin tone. Now I look at an East Indian, and I recognize that that individual is twice as dark as me, yet I do not consider him black. This term has now become so vague that it is not applicable in particular conversations, right? However, you would hear me say black African power. I'm a black man. That might be confusing in some instances because that is a socio-political identification. We all on this panel, one thing we ain't arguing about. We black. That's for sure.
Yep.
There's no argument amongst us. Our history, our socio-political history puts us in a particular paradigm where we are this. We are black. However, to have this conversation outside of this framework and apply the
Mm-hmm.
term, it becomes difficult to pin down. Because every time you say black, it refers right back to that socio-political construct. There's no other way you can use it. Human beings aren't black or white. Even when the term white was invented in Europe, it was to distinguish the aristocrats from the commoners. The commoners out in the field, they're usually tan. We sit in our ivory towers and we put lead powder on our faces and we call ourselves quote unquote white. When the aristocrats came to the New World, they adopted the same philosophy initially. Irish, Italians, these were all non-white. It was the aristocrats in the
And then
South that were white because they modeled themselves after the aristocrats in Europe. So there is no context that these terms aren't racialized, aren't political. So that is what makes the conversation difficult, right?
so, and
And
let me wait.
another
Can I
thing
just
is,
respond to that real quick
you
to
made a
clear it
great
up,
point
brother?
about
Yeah,
taking
let him
Peace,
respond
our.
to you
y'all.
and
I'm
then
up.
you can have the floor.
My fault, bro. I
Peace,
can't
brother
hear
Cedric.
everybody. My fault.
Peace to the
Peace,
panel. I'm
Sultan.
up.
Peace, Santan.
I appreciate you, man.
Yes,
Go
sir.
So
ahead.
Cedric, so I admit, so then I acknowledge your concern, right? So then what I would like for you to do is maybe re-examine my information and my point, because my point is to smoothen that out a bit, right? Because you didn't say it was completely wrong, it was completely anathema, but you said it gets bumpy, it gets difficult. So what my information attempts to do is smoothen that difficulty out. Because let me just say this. Now that I look back on my information, I'm having a political conversation, because in my Blackology, I even stated that, and I made it political actually. I was having a political conversation because I acknowledge that the Dalit Dravidians, right, they face racial oppression. They're the untouchables. That's political. And how the Hindu caste system even puts religiously them in a racial caste system. So then I also compared the genocide with the Papuans, the Melanesian peoples in Indonesia. So really it was a political affiliation, and it was the fact that and I mentioned apartheid South Africa and then Jim Crow in the Americas. So all of the peoples that I genetically and scientifically spoke about, I was really also having the political conversation on top of that. And I used the similar racial oppression as a shared experience. And shared experience creates a common culture. So really, I was using scientific data to create a political model to reinforce this sense of Black on a socio-political level. So I definitely was doing that politically. And I used scientific data and cultural data to make that statement. So it's oriented in the sense of us sharing racial oppression, and we just so happen to share certain phenotypes based on convergent evolution, social pressures, and things like that.
Sometimes your dark stay back.
Green, you wanted the floor? Green. Green, you wanted the floor?
Yeah, but okay, that's cool. But the thing about it is you have to be clear when when you having your discussions, because all right, when you take our understanding and our racial politics outside of the context of the United States, it gets murky. Because even though there are, even in Africa, there are some people, because of modern media, because of hip hop, and because of that thing, the word is spreading out. And previously, our scholars like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and things like that. There are some Africans that have a Black consciousness, but the vast majority of them, when they come out, so many of them say, I've heard this so many times, it's too many to count. They come over here and say, I didn't find out I was Black until I got to the United States. That's because they have a whole different way of self-identity, of relating to the world, of seeing the world. They have their own worldview. And I think it's honestly, it's American, it's really American of us to impose the way we see things on those people. And it doesn't always work, because like the girl, what's the girl that sang oh, Tyler, yeah, because she's from South Africa. And she's an Afrobeat singer, and she was, one of her songs got big over the United States, so she's making her general rounds. And over in South Africa, you're colored, your cat, they got their own distinction, but whatever it was, she was colored. So she got in trouble for saying she was colored over here. You know what I mean? Because we have our background and
We
what
have
colored
adjusted,
means.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
from her perspective, that's just what she was, because she grew up in the South African system, and their word for what she was colored.
Which
And
was the
so it
same
was
for
you
what
know what I mean?
ours
It was
was.
really a mix. It was just an illustration of how the cultures can be different, even though we
Well,
all quote unquote Black people. So we
I'm
just
I'm
got to
so
be
glad.
careful with imposing
Sorry.
our understanding and our baggage and our worldview and our personal and our cultural perspective onto other people, because that's kind of disrespectful to them and their worldview and their humanity and what the way that they see things.
And I definitely respect that. What I want to say is that your example exactly exactly spoke to my point, actually, because, and I'm going to refer back to the other populations that I referenced on a political sense as Black and sharing this shared experience in common culture. I mentioned the Papuans, I mentioned the Dravidians, the Dalit, and I mentioned apartheid South Africa. Now, with your last statement, you just reinforced my statement, and I'm going to state the Dravidians and the apartheid South Africa with your statement to show my point that the Dravidians, those Dalit, calling them Black is not imposing something American on them. Because remember, I said that Black thing comes from the Western world, which includes Europe. And it is actually through the British that the term Black made its way into India, right? Because the Dravidians self reference as Black. Many Dravidians count themselves as the Black population of India. And I've heard, Dr. Upadhyaya refer to him and his people as Black. There was a popular song by a Dravidian young man named called "I'm a Black N-word," right? Self-identifying as Black. That's in the pop culture, and then also in the scholastic realm, Dr. Upadhyaya also referred to him and his people as Black. And these are not isolated, right? So they self-identify as Black because they were exposed to the same racial casting that we were. So they are called Black for the very same reason we are called Black. And it's due to this social construct that I already admitted I am opting into politically. So then with your example, in apartheid South Africa, they are called colored for the same reason we were called colored, right? And we used to accept it as a classification for us the same way they accept it as a classification. But our politics has evolved and our terminology has moved past that, right? Onto things like African American and on from Black. Because we were Negro, colored, Black, African American, right? They
So I
were
think,
stuck in that same classification. So we used to be called colored for the same reason why they were called colored.
no,
But our politics has moved past
no.
that.
I think you're missing the point pre-made. When we project,
I get what he said.
no, because
I'm
when
explaining my point.
her, her colored is a standard because she's mixed. In South Africa, when you're mixed, like her and Trevor Noah, they're called colored. So no,
I get that.
she would not identify with the term black or Negro because that's not within her social system. In
I
the
mentioned
in the
colored.
Caribbean, for example, black in some islands, black has nothing to do with color, period. Like you are going to walk up to a blue-eyed, blonde-haired man, call him white, and he'll hit you because you're being racist because he's black. Why is he black? Because he's a Caribbean. He is not a Yankee like you. He's not a foreigner. So don't call him white. White is directly related to a foreigner. You do not call a local person white just like that. No, you're being racist, right? So these are the different contexts and social constructs in which this word now applies. Again, to go and say based on the Dravidian situation, which their with their concept of black has nothing to do with race but with status, and to equate that to the colonial powers, which yes, indeed, in South Africa,
They know
um,
they're a different race from the Brahmins. They speak two different language families. One is Indo-Iranian and one is Dravidian.
the
They know
whole
they
of
are different races.
the whole of India have different groups, different languages, different cultural
Yes,
expression. We see
exactly.
them as a collective, but within
No,
themselves, they have different groups, different cultures, and their culture is not related to quote unquote color. And when you look at the caste system, that is not using these terms in terms of race. That is a social class, not a racial identification. So to collapse these terminologies based on one way of using this word a one context, one political context, and apply that over a broad history, right, is first of all collapsing a term and
The
imposing
Dalit
a
Dravidian.
philosophy onto other people that they don't have.
But I'm showing you that it's not.
A Dravidian
Through their
will
cultural
identify
history,
himself as a Dravidian. He's a
but they
Dravidian.
also self-reference as the English-speaking ones will self-reference as black for the
And we
same
have
recognition of what I am talking about. So I'm also speaking from their perspective of why they call themselves black. Because in the era, hold on, there's an echo. There's an echo. When the Black Panthers were in
The
their
English speaking ones, right?
hold on,
The
just hold
English
on real
speaking
quick.
ones, right?
Just hold on. Because I've only heard the English speaking ones say that. So I have limited data on that. And there's a bad echo, just so you know.
so
When the Black Panthers were in their height, the Dravidians, the Dalit, recognized the similarity politically, socially, economically, all and ethnically, right? Because I'll get to that part later. They formed a group called the Dalit Panthers, taking inspiration from the Black Panthers. And there has been lots of correspondence between the Dravidian intellectuals and specifically the Black intellectual community, like Runoko Rashidi and like Dr. Clyde Ahmad Winters. You know what I mean? So the Dravidian Indians even recognize this shared ethnic thing of blackness as well. You know, so I'm not just imposing this on them. They have opted into it for the equal reason that we have opted into it. There is a history behind this, going from the intellectual realm and to the political realm with the Dalit Panthers. And in Sri Lanka, there's a group called the Tamil Tigers. And the Tamil are a specific tribe of Dravidians. You know what I mean? So there has been this intersectionality politically and ethnically. There's been an unspoken connection and teamwork between Dravidians and African Americans during the civil rights era, but that doesn't get spoken about. So I'm glad to introduce, the Dalit Panthers, who modeled themselves after the Black Panthers, and the Tamil Tigers of Sri Lanka, who modeled themselves off of the Black
okay,
Panthers.
slow down,
Wait,
slow down,
just
slow
hold
down. No,
on,
no, no, no,
because
no, no, no.
they
Stop,
acknowledge
stop,
the
stop, now,
same
stop, stop,
political unity that
stop,
I do.
stop,
But
stop. Because what?
this is
You're picking up the goalpost with six hands and you're running left feet, right? And again, this is how you're collapsing history and you're flatlining concepts that you cannot flatline. Again, when you take a modern context and these people are put in their political struggle and they identify with the other group over there that's in their political struggle, just like Martin Luther King, he used Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence, right? It is engaging and identifying with a political struggle because of their socio-political position. When you
I
say
acknowledge that.
they identified with the struggle, not necessarily being quote unquote black. They identified with the struggle. Now, when communicating
The
in a
blackness was part of
Western,
it.
no, don't cut me off. I let you build.
Yes, sir.
And you're making that socio-political connection doesn't mean that they identify ethnically. They can't identify ethnically as black, right? Black has its own distinct culture history, right? And if you're saying they're modeling it off of the Western concept, right, and then it indeed is a socio-political. We, our identity, our last ending point is black. That's a Dravidian. That's from a particular tribe, from a particular culture, from a particular group. You refer to the Tamalis, they know they're Tamali, they know they're from Indonesia. They are grounded in their cultural identity, that they share a political struggle and adopt a particular nomenclature doesn't equate them ethnically, culturally, nor socially to nothing that we understand as black. So that's why, again, collapsing the concept is fallacious because you're creating a narrative that isn't there. You're creating a historical context for these group of people to be black, as if it has anything to do with the same way we are identified in the West. And again, from the time you use the word black, you cannot separate it from its conception, its use, and its application. To give it another definition, but still tie it to the concept that we have, is confusing. And that's moving the goalposts. There is no biological connection. There's no social connection. There's no ethnical connection. There is nothing that equates these two group of people under the terminology black. There simply isn't. Their social political situation is not the same by no metric.
Okay,
So,
so when okay, you're still going.
so again,
Okay,
the
so and this,
go ahead, Dean.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and
Yeah,
I
I
was gonna
had to
say, yeah, and
respond.
this is definitely, it's definitely a goalpost move, because in the context of what the pseudo killers is doing, we're strictly talking about it from a biological, from a scientific point of view, from a perspective. So that was the whole context of the conversation. And and I'm really noticing, like, this is a pattern. We do a whole lot of talking and talking in circles and talking in circles, and then when we finally get to the point where we nail it down, well, I meant this and I didn't mean this. And but if that was if if that would have been stated ahead of time, we could have avoided the whole back and forth about nothing. And it's just pretty much it ends up being literally a waste of time, because we end up debating two separate concepts. You're talking about one concept, we're talking about another concept, and we're going back and forth like we're talking about the same thing, and we're literally in different universes. And we just got to get better at communicating, man. We just got to get better, or we got to get better at being honest and representing our position and what we're actually saying. Because if you were talking about politics, then quite honestly, that had no place in this discussion. It really didn't, because we were talking scientifically. We were talking biologically. We were talking anthropology and all of that type of stuff, and why certain conclusions were made and weren't made. You know what I mean? We even, in the early part, when Ankh even came on, he made it a thing to emphasize that incorrect information was originally published about the Grimaldi Man, to bring it back full circle. And that's really, to me,
Agreed.
that's the biggest point. That's the biggest point of this discussion today. That if you're not careful, you will repeat and regurgitate some false pseudoscientific stuff. And that's where personal integrity comes into play. You got to be honest with yourself. Damn, I understand this kind of sort of, I could twist this to agree with my position, but does it really mean that? Like, at some point, that has to kick in. Otherwise, you're gonna be out in public arguing crazy stuff. And I'll leave mine at that.
Before you take the floor,
Well,
God Energy,
yeah,
I'm gonna let Blackmail close this out, because we're around the 3 hour mark. So I'm gonna let him close out. You get the last word, and then we out of here. So Blackmail, you got the floor. Any last remarks before we get up out of here?
Yeah, I learned a lot, as usual. Give thanks to the show, God Energy said, Anonymous Prime. Yeah, all respect, all even the chat too. Bless, respect.
All right, appreciate you, my brother. You got the floor, God Energy. Make
yeah.
it
Thank
short,
you.
because I'm ready to get out of here.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And Anonymous Prime did say it perfectly. I should have just clearly stated, you know what I mean, more of where I was coming from, because I just presented the data, whatever data I use, and I forgot to preface it that it was political each time I spoke. But in the Blackology intro, we did definitely get into that, and I did mention that this was political as well. So just maybe take the time to familiarize yourself with the information under that lens now. But thank you for having me. It was a great show.
I appreciate you coming through. It was a really good conversation. I appreciate you. Blackmail, you're always welcome on this panel, my brother. Your contribution is always welcome. Don't forget the space show is Tuesday nights at 9:30, between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. I know you enjoy that kind of stuff, so make sure that you're in the building Tuesday nights where Anthony breaks down some stuff. I think you would have a good contribution in that show. I really think so. So I hope you see you in the building Tuesday coming for the space show. All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it was a great show. I appreciate God energy coming through. I'm going to take a look at his political views. We cleared it up that you absolutely can't use outdated information to make certain claims. Flatlining the concept of black puts you automatically in a socio-political arena, and it doesn't map on to historical narratives. Again, thank y'all for being here. I'll be back on Sunday with another Sunday school. Sunchild, you should have hit the link, Sunchild. I'll be back with another Pseudokillas Sunday School. I'll be back on Monday with another installment of the philosophy of mind. I'm going to take us all the way through that. I think it is paramount. I think it is foundational. I think the work I've been doing with that is grounding us in having these conversations a little bit more coherently. Shout out to the God Killer and the community of skeptics. Tune in to his show every weekday, every morning at I think 10:30 to 11 o'clock. We'll be going live. The Pseudokillas, community of skeptics. We're a community of broadcast shows. Don't forget Sunday with Malcolm and Med Talks. He's on most weeks, if not every other week, but stay tuned. Don't forget, we got the Hit the Button show. This was not a drive-by. It was a set talk to deal with the what's his name, man? Now I forgot his name. Damn. Anyway, this is what we do as Pseudokillas. We hunt down pseudoisms. We provide you with the accurate, correct information. We synthesize the proper information. We show you the sources, etc. And I appreciate y'all support. We got some work in the mill. Pseudokilla is expanding what we do. We got some literature coming soon. It is in the process of being vetted and checked out, but it is arming you with scientific literacy. It's a good tool. We'll be working on that, so stay tuned. We hope you support the expansion of what we do here in providing you with scientific literacy. Again, that is the vaccine against the scammers, charlatan, hoodwinkers, and the flim-flammers in your community trying to steal intellectual property between your ears. And I'm going to leave y'all with these two last tracks.
Pseudo-killer. Pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. Pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. I'm a pseudo-killer nigga, and I'm coming for your head. So scammers accountable for the pseudo shit that they spread. Ain't no more running, nigga, I'm pseudos to bed. I'm the boogeyman for these prayers, leaving these streets red. I'm a pseudo-killer, 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 pseudo-killer. No frauds, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo-killers. Don't flim-flam for hustlers and scammers. We pseudo-killers, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. I'm tired of this talking, nigga, static, running their mouth. Beating just on platforms, always loud and wildin' out. They ain't saying nothing, only begging. begging for some clout. When I step in the ring, nigga, mama say knock you out. I'm a pseudo-killer, 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 pseudo-killer. No fraud, no fake, no feelings. We straight pseudo-killers, no flim-flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo-killers, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. If think you won't smoke, nigga, come and take your shot. It been a long time coming, nigga, now show us what you got. I ain't trying to be friendly, nigga, wipe ass out your face. This is war, nigga, only one way to end. Say goodbye to net. I'm a pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. No bras, no fake, no fillers. We straight pseudo-killer. No flip-flammer, hustlers and scammers. We pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. Science is undefeated, nigga, so we never lose. We always well equipped, nigga, armed with all the tools. Always ready for a pseudo, they always tryna pin the rules. BK stumping, go these clowns, got them looking like some fools. Fuck around and find out, nigga, you should've stayed in school. I'm a pseudo-killer, 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 pseudo-killer. No frauds, no fake, no sellers. Be straight pseudo-killers, no flim-flammer, hustlers and scammers. Be pseudo-killer, 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 pseudo-killer. Pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer. Pseudo-killer, pseudo-killer.
Black African power. What's good? What's happening? A well-organized lie. A well-organized lie. Defeats a disorganized truth. Every time, for who we?
A pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo-killer, I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. Pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo-killer, I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring. Who do you believe in? People bringing misinformation when that information ain't disinformation. That's disinformation. Gotta know the difference in information. Get information with the pseudo-killer army hunting pseudo. Cause you gotta train your mind to fight against them pseudo-judo. People with the scholarship salute, we give them kudos. But the people with that look of shit, we look and see straight through those like telescope. If you ain't speaking fast, we gotta tell them folks and let them know the truth of. You bringing malinformation to blast, then you the Ku Klux. Like say, don't talk me to death, bro, what the proof of? Good choo-choo chillin', why you wanna go way bad choo-choo up? Shalom boy got the tank in the cut. I'm in Sosa world plotting on the kick though with Kent. Come in Tiffany gave me the pseudo names on the list and said went and got the low. Anthony got him in the scope, Gullah and Gozy make sure DNA ain't a problem for them folks. Cause a pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo-killer, I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. Pseudo gon' die, they saw a pseudo-killer, I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey. I'm a pseudo-killer, intellectual sunstring, hey.
We're not attacking individuals. We're attacking the information and attacking the methodology. This is a long time coming right here. Let them know that we right there, running neck and neck with all other commitments. We will not be left behind.
Listen, family, join the Pseudokiller army. It's a war on for the intellectual property between your ears. Don't just be a passive onlooker. Hit that subscribe button. Share it with your family and friends. Join the Pseudokiller armies. Get in the Discord. That's where all the fights happen. And with that, we out.